Motherfucker.
The start of a new week in this Zionist world order. Never forget what Amalek did to you when you were fleeing Egypt, and the sting of Pharaoh's whip upon your backs. Never again. Never forget. Never forget anything, right? All of these atrocities. It's a brand that has been built on atrocity propaganda and hyperbole and exaggeration. The Exodus never happened. Just so you know. For those of you keeping score at home, the Exodus never happened. It's fucking a mythological tale. Moses never existed. Oh, I know all the Muslims and the Christians out there are aghast. No, Bert. It says it in the Holy Quran. Moshe was real, and the whole story is true. No, it's not true. It's not true. It didn't happen. He didn't exist. He wasn't adopted by Pharaoh's sister. He wasn't put on a reed basket and floated down the Nile. Didn't happen. So and another thing is, we see where we are when we allow fiction to become historicized, right? We see where that brings us, where that leads us, what reality that manifests into this world. And it's nothing good. There's no good in any of it. Historicizing fiction is damaging. Why? Because if you have a collection of people that have no scruples, have no ethics, are not bound by any constraints, well, they can psychologically manipulate you to enslave you, dumb fucks. That's why. And this is a big part of it. I can't believe here we are in 2024, still dancing to this fucking Bronze Age Jewish mythological mumbo jumbo. And the Christ and the Jesus and the prophets and the chosen people. Chosen my ass. They chose themselves, dumb fucks. That's what happened here. I'm worn out. I'm fucking tired. I'm getting sick. And I'm getting exhausted. Fighting Jewish supremacy is exhausting. It extracts a heavy toll. But when the stakes are this high, when the fate of the fucking humanity hangs in the balance, what choice do we have? What choice do we have? So Trish Negron, Trish the Dish, remember her? My first co-host. She just called me. Actually, she left me a message, and I called her back. And she's finding shit in her background, in her past, in her lineage, and questioning stuff. Right? It doesn't matter what you are. It doesn't matter what kind of blood is flowing through your veins, in terms of an ethnicity, racial, genetic perspective, point of view. It makes no fucking difference what you are genetically. It's who are you, the person, that matters. Are you a good person or are you a fucking prick? Are you a liar, or do you tell the truth? Would you brutalize children, or would you protect them? Would you do the right thing or cheat every fucking chance you get? This is the only thing that matters. These are the only things that matter. Matters not what your great grandfather was, where he hailed from, who he called his people, what God he worshipped. Makes no fucking difference whatsoever. We are engaged in a sacred conflict. The stakes are very high. We face an existential threat. The possibility remains that we are in an extinction level jeopardy. Extinction level jeopardy. It's real. Oh, but Bert, the Khazarian mafia did it. It's them. It's their serpent and phallus worshippers. They're disgusting. Oh yeah? When was the last Khazarian you saw? Khazaria hasn't been fucking in existence for 1,000 years. Why would you let them off the hook? Why would you do this misdirect and not put the blame squarely on them? Those we cannot speak of. Those who cannot be named. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Lord. I feel the Holy Ghost in me right now. I'm going to channel some Holy Ghost power. I could do a show for y'all. I could do a little tap dance, a little shim-sham, and a little sleight of hand, and be completely disingenuous and say, thank you, Jesus, and hop up and down on one leg. The fuck is going on with you people? How is this even possible? How is this even a fucking possibility that people can be taken so easily? Lemmings. No discernment. I read it in my fake history book, Bert. I saw it on the Talmud Vision last night, Bert. It's what the talking heads are saying. Ari Melba, Rachel Maddow, and Brian Stelzer. Alan Dershowitz and Rabbi Shmuley were telling me all about them. They're shooting the women in the vagina. They're targeting vaginas, Bert. They're cutting off breasts and throwing them around like footballs, Bert. Oh, okay. Oh, is that what happened? Is that what happened? Okay. Oh, because the New York Times said so. Because Anthony Blinken repeated a bunch of lies. And then your president, Joe Biden, repeated a bunch of more lies. And then Rabbi Shmuley not just repeated the new lies, but the old debunked lies. Not that these new lies have been already debunked. He's going back fucking decades. He's going back to World War II and Nazi Poland. Right? The jerk-off machines, the shrunken heads, right? The ovens and all the other accoutrements of this crafted fucking narrative. Oh, but you can't be that. You can't say that, Bert. That's an H denier. Blah, 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 blah. Well, you can't accuse me of that because I know atrocities happened. Was it to the degree and to the extent and to the levels that they say? No. And you know what? Go ahead. Go ahead, Deborah Leipschitz. Sue. Let's see the best evidence you can come up with. And you know what? It doesn't matter because they control the courts. Even though they don't have the evidence they found against David Irving. Even though they can't fucking substantiate any of it. They can't substantiate any of it. And I got the headlines for fucking years preceding the onslaught, right? And during. the conflagration that you call WW2. Headlines with the certain mystical numbers. 2 million dead. Only 4 million left in 1941. 2 million dead. Only 4 million left in 1941. And I don't want to do this whole thing on it because, like I said, we know what's going on. We know what's happening here. And I got a lot of clips and etc. and so forth. My buddy's in the hospital. I'm worried about him. Sucks. So here we go. Cosmic Johnson. Hello, and my throat's giving. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to go today. I'm going to try to keep my. I forgot to get lozenges. I fucking go outside. I went out to get some shit. I got to get 4 or 5 items, and I forget the major item I went out there for. So my head's not really in the game, guys. Go ahead, Cosmic. Hello.
Hello. Thank you again for having me on. Okay, and I just wanted to throw in a really thought-provoking statement, okay, which I can't actually prove, okay, yeah, but again, it comes from my research into it, okay, including information from both Islamic and also secular and also atheist sources as well, including yourself, Albert, as well, okay, and what my statement is about is concerning the reason why the Jews or Zionists or whoever have taken over the world, basically. Okay. Anyway, take it as you like. Okay. So please do listen carefully. I mean, you can laugh
not the world.
Over.
Thankfully, not the world, Cosmic, but the Western Hemisphere for sure.
Yes. Okay, so basically, okay, yeah, my research leads me to believe, okay, that we, humanity, we live on planet Earth in time periods, okay, in time cycles. Each time cycle, I'm not sure how long it is. Let's say, for argument's sake, it's 5,000 years, okay. Each one begins or ends with a massive catastrophic event. The last one was a great flood, basically, okay. And what's happening is that in this time period, again, just please bear with me. Again, in this time period, the tribe of Jacob or Israel, okay, or tribe of Israel, not the state of Israel, was given the message by God, which they corrupted, okay, yeah? And Satan being Satan, okay, and Satan being Satan loves inverting things. Do we agree? He turns things opposite around. That's why we have like LGBT. Man is a woman is a man. Everything is upside down. Good is evil, evil is good. War is peace, peace is war. Okay, so Satan being Satan, doing the ultimate genius evil plan, he made the people who are meant to give the message of God, the tribe of Israel, not the state of Israel, and he made them into the worst people at the end of the time cycle. So in the beginning, they began off as a good tribe, and they would end up as being the worst people basically at the end of this time cycle, which we are approaching. Hope that makes sense. Thank you for listening.
All right, yeah, I guess it makes it can make it's an explanation, it's a rationale, but it's based on nothing but faith. That's it. That's your story. You can stick to it, but you can't prove a word of it. That's my point.
Yes, I agree, but I feel there is certain things which can back up that story.
Like
okay,
what?
So some of that would be coming from Islamic sources, and some of it would also be coming from
best evidence Islam has for the existence of Moses.
Okay, because in the Quran itself, there are things in there, okay, which are actually, which I would say could not be provided by a man. So, for example, if I can just say some examples, okay, that in the Quran, it states that everything is built in opposites, okay. So, for example, we have a man and a woman. We have words, on, off, night and day, good, evil, okay. Even things that we can't see, like positive and negative. Okay, that's one evidence. And another one is, again, the explanation of who God is makes a lot more sense. Basically, we believe that God is one consciousness. He's not a man. He's not like Jesus that came down and then we had to basically kill him so that we could save ourselves. Okay, we don't have that nonsense. Okay, ours is just it's one God who is not a person and who does not have a beginning or an end and is beyond our thinking. So like we think in three-dimensional terms, to us everything has to have a beginning and an end, but with God it's different. God is on a different multi-dimensional whatever, okay, plane, okay, beyond our understanding. We cannot understand the concept of God, okay, but many people make the mistake of trying to humanize God. Okay, plus other things as well. Okay, like there was a story about how during the prophet's time, the Roman Empire were on their last legs. Okay, they were totally dying and being crushed by the Persian Empire. Everybody thought the Romans would be totally destroyed. Okay, and then the prophet said in the Quran, he said that very soon, within 9 years, the Roman Empire will win this war basically and make a comeback. Okay, everybody laughed at it. Okay, and he also stated where it would be. He said it would. This big war would happen in the lowest of lands, okay? Right, okay? And then it turned out the Romans did indeed win a massive battle against the Persian Empire in the most lowest, what's the word? Elevation of land, near the Dead Sea, sir, okay? So this actually happened, and it happened, and at the time, okay, it was like how the Zionists have total domination of the world, okay? And then someone said, oh, guess what? The Palestinians are going to win. Cool.
There's nothing supernatural about making a very accurate prognostication. Now, let me ask you this. You say, oh, it gives us this, that, and the other thing, balance and polarity and everything. Do you understand that in terms of the seven Hermetic principles, which predate anything Abrahamic by thousands of years, had everything that you just said? The principle of mentalism. The all is mind, the universe is mental. The principle of correspondence, as above, so below. The principle embodies that the truth that there is always a correspondence between the laws and phenomena of the various planes of being and life. The principle of vibration. Nothing rests, nothing moves, everything vibrates. The principles of polarity. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. The principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swings, manifests. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. The principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect. Every effect, its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for a law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. And seventh, the principle of gender. Gender is in everything. Gender has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. Notice that this is even superior because it distinguishes only two genders. So Hermeticism is predates this stuff and basically superior. You don't need to believe in walking, talking snakes, frogs raining from heaven, taking a ride to heaven on a unicorn through the dome of the Alaska Mosque or whatever. I don't need to believe in fairy tales. This is good enough, and it's mental alchemy, right? It's not changing lead to gold physically, but it's a philosophical change. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Johnson, will you have anything to say to that?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I'm not fully, know all the knowledge about what you just said, basically. But
write this down. Write this down. Write this down. Right.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
The 7. Write down this. This is all you need to write. 3 words. 7 Hermetic principles. That's it.
Okay, sure. Okay. And I agree with what you're saying, that people have found, smart people have found out how the universe works and so on. Okay, but how did the Prophet Muhammad know all this stuff and was able to collate all this information in one small poetic book? Okay, and so. And also, it has been recorded that when the Prophet was dictating the book, he would say the verses in one go, in one sentence. Okay, now. From what we know, okay, when we write a book or when we say something, people are always going back, they're erring and ahhing, and they might say something and then go back and say, oh, actually, no, that bit was wrong. I need to say it like this, or they'll add, nonsensical words in between sentences, like or ah. But when the Prophet Muhammad was dictating the Quran, he said everything in one go. He did not go back to edit anything he said. Okay, I would
like. Yeah, that would be fascinating if it was true. I just don't know that that's true.
Well, from my research, that's again primarily from Islamic sources. That's what actually happened. Well, okay, so
that's what you claim happened. I don't know that happened.
Okay, sure. I'd probably have to provide you more conclusive evidence on that. Okay, but from my understanding, that's what happened. Okay, but I will dig into it.
I get that's what Muslims believe, but I don't know that. I understand what you're saying, Cosmic. It's just not. You can't. There's no way for me to verify any of it. I have to take the word on it. I have to take the Prophet's word on it. I have to take the Quran's word on it.
Okay, but I believe there has been some secular studies as well, from like non-Islamic sources, and in fact, there was actually a big, well-funded study done by secular academics, specializing in linguistics and historical analysis.
I appreciate it. I don't want to do the space on validating the Quran or Islam or any of that stuff. No problem. We got a genocide in Gaza, okay?
Yeah, sure, no problem again. But my whole point was that the Quran does state that this empire, okay, who I believe again are the Gog and Magog, they are about to collapse and come down, my friend. That was what it boiled down to. But I was just trying to validate the evidence behind it, which obviously I can see. I need to give you more conclusive information, which is absolutely fine, okay? But I just wanted to conclude that the whole point was that the Quran is saying that these people are the tribe of Gog and Magog. That's their real identity, sir, and that they are about to collapse in a major way. Okay, thank you for listening.
Thank you for participating. Sapien, hello.
Hello, Albert. Thank you for the space. Yeah, I don't want to shift the conversation. That's what I wanted to say. But in terms of evidence, and that is, as I mentioned previously, the first month or two when we started the spaces. So there is clearly the scientific evidence that mentioned in the Quran. For example, what we talked about.
It's not clear, bro. Come on.
It is clear. I mean, the evidence that was discovered, which was discovered.
It is there. No. Listen, I don't let the Jews get away with it. I don't let the Christians get away with it. I'm not going to let Muslims get away with, misrepresenting shit. It's not clear. It's far from clear.
That's what I said. Like last time when we spoke, that you have to go and read and check by yourself. For example, the internal waves about, the pain receptors being in the skin, for example, the water, every living beings are mostly made of water. So there is a lot of evidence, that's mentioned, which was discovered only recently.
You can't prove to me that they did not have this knowledge in, let's say, Alexandria, Antioch, or anywhere else. You can't demonstrate that they didn't have this knowledge there.
Yeah, but for example, just the internal waves, it was discovered in the 19th century, so in the ocean, and So how come only like after, a 12th or 14th century after we discovered that? So for example, this is just one thing. I don't want to shift the conversation, but I'm saying there is enough evidence in the Quran itself, even the way it's written. If you speak Arabic, the eloquency, if you read it, it's just unmatchable. So, and there is a verse, it will challenge, and if you can come in, if someone speaking Arabic as well, like come in with the text similar to it. So, as I said,
all you Muslims and you Jews, we're gonna make all of you change your evil point of view today.
Yeah, but the purpose, Albert, is not, as I said, we don't want to like shift the discussion. We have major things going on, so
that's right. We got major shit going on. Let's get to it, guys. And folks, if you want to participate, you know the deal. Rabbi Shmuley's being harassed everywhere he goes. He can't just even take an ice skating tour without being attacked by Hamas terrorists on the ice. He can't make one appearance at the ice rink and meet his daughter and have a little skating around the rink with his daughter, who makes the slickest sex lube on the market that you can possibly slap on your Johnson, that facilitates, optimizes, and maximizes the best kosher sex experience of your life. He can't even go out with his daughter that makes the sex lube and have a skate around the rink without being attacked by an anti-Semitic Hamas terrorist. Do you understand this?
Albert.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to, since Cosmic Johnson is here, I want to ask him what happened recently in the UK in the Parliament. So I was following, there is a lot of news. So if he can brief us what happened recently about in relation of Israel and Gaza.
Yeah, sure. So I will quickly summarize because I don't want to take up the time and space, but basically there was meant to be a vote in Parliament to have a cease, to at least tell Israel, stop fighting, let's have a ceasefire. Okay, that was a motion brought forward. Basically, it was meant to be last Tuesday, and then what happened was something that's never ever happened before. The Speaker of the House, during as the motion was being set forth and people and MPs were discussing the subject, the Speaker of the House literally did a runner and he left the room basically. Okay, and he disappeared. Okay, and then by the time he came back, there's a time limit for each motion, and that time limit had passed basically. So therefore, this motion was not heard in Parliament to have a ceasefire. Okay, all because the Speaker did a runner, which is absolutely and utterly unheard of. Okay, so a lot of people on my side of the fence, and like your guys, we're all thinking it's a conspiracy basically. It was games being played by the Zionists to influence the motion, to making sure nothing, that ceasefire motion could not be heard. Okay, and since then the Speaker has been interviewed and asked why did he run away for basically, because it's never been seen before, and he's now coming up with nonsense. Like he's saying that apparently that he was given information that there could have been a possible terrorist event targeting MPs. So therefore, if he stayed behind and let the motion be heard, there was a serious risk of a terrorist event happening. But he hasn't provided any evidence behind it at all. Okay, so it's basically all a massive power play here, and a lot of people suspect it's Zionist manipulation games going on to get that motion for ceasefire to be not heard in Parliament. I hope that makes sense. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, people see that the fuckery is about. They see that they're playing procedural games, fucking mechanical games, not to do it. And then his whole excuse is, there was going to be a terrorist attack if I stayed. Members of MPs were going to be targeted by terrorist attack. Well, that only works one time, right? So they can put that back up on a motion now, right? What's the difference? Just do another motion now. Oh, you're gonna scared that there's gonna be another terrorist attack if you do it? That's his rationale. And who the fuck is he to take that off the table? If it's a procedural thing, if there's gonna be a motion to have this vote, how can he stop it in perpetuity?
Yes, I totally agree. And what's happened has never happened before. It's totally unprecedented. Okay, and yeah, it's just totally mental, totally mental. And in terms of what you just said, Albert, about why can't it happen again? Yes, I agree with you, okay, because that makes logical sense. But apparently there is some process to it, and that could take a long time. And by the time they get around to it again, the war could end. So yeah, it's literally political games and manipulation happening. Okay, all brought on by Zionists, infiltration and manipulation right in front of our eyes. It's just a joke.
Yeah, and then they're putting like all this propaganda on Big Ben and 10 Downing Street with like the river to the sea, the Israeli flag and shit. You're totally cucked. And I mean, not as bad as we are, but you guys are horribly cucked. We have to do more heavy lifting for the Zionists, and they can. But in terms of our government, it's probably equally controlled, right? Like they call the shots here, they call the shots in the UK, France. Not even France is not even playing ball anymore. It's basically America, UK, Germany now, right? Those are the big three. France isn't as gung ho anymore on this, and they're pro ceasefire. So it's splitting, right? The support is peeling off, and thank God it is. And then we got to talk about obviously Kid Rock and what a fucking who cares. Why are people even concerned about Kid Rock? The guy's a fucking idiot. He's as dumb as they come. Dumber than a box of rocks. Dumber than hammered shit. A fucking moron. Why would anybody get worked up about what Kid Rock says? Seriously. So there's a lot going on, right? We're gonna hear from there's an Arab League made their presentation. Turkey made a presentation to the ICJ. Russia already did. China already did. They're lining up. The Zionist state's going to be in legal litigation from now until God knows when. There will be a cosmic reckoning. There will be reparations made. They're not going to get away with genocide. It's not going to happen. They think they're going to get away with it. But they're not. Because if I need guys, if you're not speaking, please turn your mic off. If there's any justice in the world, right? If there's any utility for the UN, there's no way a country in 2024 can get away with genocide. If they do, if somehow some fucking miracle they do, then the UN has no utility. What's the fucking point? What's the point? So I want to play a couple of clips here. I'm not gonna play Kid Rock, not now at least. Who the fuck cares about that? What that idiot has to say anyway?
You're watching Al Jazeera English. It's just on 10:25 GMT. That's 1 here in Doha. You have been watching Dr. Ralph Weil, the senior counsel and advocate for the League of Arab States. He spoke shortly after Abdul Hakim El-Rafi, the chargé d'affaires, a permanent mission of the League of Arab States in Brussels, a very detailed legal setting out of exactly what the occupation means for Palestinians.
You know what? Let's play this first. Let's play the Greek. Excuse me, the Turkish ambassadors. You know what? Let's go in this order. Hold on.
The world knows without the U.S. funding, there would be no slaughter in Gaza.
I think that it's very clear that the White House does not want an intense, wider war in the region. But nonetheless, the reality is that it is tethered to Netanyahu and to the cabinet in Israel, and they have different objectives. Whereas I think that particularly in Gaza and in Lebanon and in the region as a whole, as Amos Hochstein, the envoy of the White House, said very clearly, yes, it's going to happen. We're going to have more interventions in the region, particularly in Lebanon. But the object of the United States is to keep the level of violence down to the lowest that's possible. Now, is that going to be realistic? Is that going to happen? Well, what I think we're seeing is really two distinct types of warfare facing off at one another. On the one hand, Israel's type of warfare, which is derived and the same as the American, is still, if you like, the shock and awe inheritance before. You go in, a quick military action, dominated by air supremacy, you smash everything up, and then you see what happens afterwards. And this has also been the Israeli policy for years, if you like, from 73 onwards. Heavy total reliance on air defenses and simply not so much on ground forces fighting it out on the ground at all. And during this period, both the West and Israel have had air supremacy guaranteed, more or less, except when they last fought Hezbollah in 2006. Because even then, Hezbollah had started to move to a new form of warfare. Everything was buried underground. The rockets, the men, everything valuable buried far underground. And so they just allowed the Air Force to roll over it. And it destroyed buildings and it destroyed bridges and whatever. It rolled over it. And when it was finished, Hezbollah started firing its missiles and rockets. And this proves something that was essential in understanding what we're dealing with now and why the war is so different. It is that in doing this, when they did this, they discovered that actually Israel doesn't have military endurance. They'd used up their smart bombs within the first 3 days. It was continuous. But at the other end of the situation, Israel's population was not coping with the regular daily missile attack on them. It was causing great strains, and Israelis said this very clearly. Our population is not capable of sustaining a prolonged attack. And Hezbollah was able to prolong it, and they prolonged it ultimately for 33 days. And this is why we have this great difference in approach of warfare. On the one hand, that developed out of 2006, and also the thinking of Qasem Soleimani, the sort of, if you like, the cloud.
Well, what do you think Hezbollah has been up to since 2006, since the last time they dispensed an Israeli ass whooping in South Lebanon? You think they were standing idle? Or don't you think they were digging deeper and re-upping? And they have very sophisticated capabilities. Anti-ship missiles, okay? They have tunnel systems like, you know, we know how sophisticated the Hamas tunnel systems are underneath Gaza. Imagine what Hezbollah has. Right? It's not going well for our kosher friends. It's not going well at all. And the prospects for a Lebanese campaign, you can't defeat Hamas in Gaza. You're going to open up another front in northern Israel and South Lebanon. Fuck right off. Nobody buys that shit. You don't have the fucking stomach for that. You don't have the fucking balls for that. You're not equipped for that. You don't have the faculties to do it. It's not within their facility. It's not. Not enough people. Too many beta incels. Not enough fighting men. Not enough ordnance. It's basically a suicide mission. They want to go on a suicide mission. I ain't going to stop them. Far from it. I'm going to get the popcorn. I'm going to get ready. It's not like, oh, Bert, how can you actively root against Israel? Well, because Israel is a satanic, malevolent state. Arguably the most evil entity that's ever existed in the world. I've done actual polls on this. What's the most evil entity in the annals of recorded history and time? Sodom and Gomorrah, Nazi Germany, or Israel? And Israel gets over 90% of the votes. Thousands of people participating. I'm not alone. You're not alone. We're not alone. The entirety of the global south is with us. Asia is with us, including Japan, including Korea, including the DPRK, North Korea, Kim Jong-un. China is with us. Japan, Indonesia, Malaysia. Just about the entirety of the East, save, I think, Singapore. I don't know what's going on in Singapore. They got a lot of. Singapore is a capitalist bastion. There's probably got a lot of conversos, a lot of tribes doing business in Singapore, right? But everywhere else, the majority of the people of Europe are with us, not the governments, the people. What is it here in America? I don't even know. Is it 60-40 pro-Israel now? 65-35 pro-Israel now? If anyone has those poll numbers, let me know. I know what the Canadians think. They're aghast. They're horrified with this. The average Canadian citizen. I know where they are in Mexico. I know where they are in Central America. It's literally the entirety of the world, save India, right? India, and that's about it. And there's, tens of millions of Indians that are not on board. Not just and it's not just every Hindu nationalist. There's disagreement amongst even some of Modi's people on this. It's not a uniform thing. It's not a echo chamber. It's not a mass consensus.
Of our modern era was that you have everything buried, you have it deeply down, and the two things, and this you will see from Iran and also from the resistance, is the key way to win this war is that the enemy, in their case as they view it, being Israel, doesn't have long breath. It is not capable of mounting prolonged war. America's rather similar in this respect. So they want a long war of attrition. And to do that, you have to do two things. Because, of course, America has forces in the region. They call them tripwire forces that are there, if you like, to promise retribution if they're attacked. But what Iran and the resistance want is that they want to calibrate the intensity of the war. That this is careful to make sure it doesn't slip into a full-scale violence, into a full-scale war. So they want control of calibration. And as you've seen, we've seen that Iran has persuaded the Hashad, the Iraqi militia, not to go on firing weapons for the time being at American bases in the region, because they understand that those American bases, yes, they're a tripwire, but they're also the, if you like, the conveyor belt, allowing the neocons to move closer and closer to war with Iran, which Iran is not wanting that. So the Iranians said, okay, hold on. So they calibrate the intensity, but they keep escalatory dominance. They can escalate when they want. They can go back to the Hashad and say, okay, go for it now. Push all at it. It's more complicated because Iraq is at the same time, the government is trying to negotiate, if you like, a withdrawal of American forces completely from the area. But that is basically the two things that make it. So what you have is you have a quick, fast, Air Force-led war on one hand, and slow attrition of Israel from the resistance and from Iranian strategic thinking is that we prolong it. The missiles go on hitting Israel. They're taking more and more of their civilian population away from the north of Israel. They can't bring them back to the area near Gaza. They're not winning in Gaza. They're not winning in with Hezbollah. But that is likely to be the case. In due course, they will very likely attack in Lebanon. But already, again, Hezbollah is managing this to, if you like, control the intensity by setting direct exchange. All right, you hit us in Sidon, which they did last week. Hit us in Sidon, the price for Sidon, we attack Haifa. The price for hitting us in Beirut is we'll take the whole area from Tel Aviv of the industrial area to the south. In that way, they control, if you like, the intensity, and therefore can keep it and allow the internal tensions in Israel to build up, and they keep the control of the escalatory dominance as much as they can. And that's what's happening now in Lebanon.
I'm detecting below the surface of your arguments a conclusion which would be heresy for the neocons, and that is both the United States and Iran are against a wider war.
That's correct.
Is that a fair conclusion from what you just said, Alistair?
It's a fair conclusion. The question is whether the United States or Iran will be able to stop it becoming a wider war. And it'll be the conflict with Hezbollah that'll be the real test of that. Even this weekend, just before, yesterday I think it was, the defense minister, Gallant, was on the border with Hezbollah, talking to troops, preparing them. And he said, we are going, and this is his words exactly, and he said, we are going to increase the level of firepower against Hezbollah, which they've already done and are in the process of doing. We are going to increase the assassination of Hezbollah figures and military officers. And we are going to continue this war, even if there's a ceasefire in Gaza, or even if there is a hostage release agreement. We will continue increasing the pressure on Hezbollah. And he ended up by saying, we will drive Hezbollah away from the border area. So it's clear this is coming. So we're in this sort of interim period where Hezbollah is setting its rules. And Iran is equally trying to maintain, and the resistance trying to maintain, if you like, a very careful calibration of this escalation in such a way it doesn't become a big war. So it's true. They don't want the neocons to get, to use what's happening to the Hashad, which is all about Gaza, but they want to use it to get at Iran. And Iran is just blocking this, managing the level of violence, just as the White House thinks it's going to be able to manage the level of violence when Israel does finally invade into Lebanon. But is it going to be able to manage it? Because Hezbollah is much more sophisticated than 2006. They have a vast range of missiles. Just to be clear, they can reach Eilat in the far reaches of Israel. Israelis know that. And they can reach other places. And this goes back to the 2006 war. It was Israel who called a halt to that war because its population couldn't sustain a prolonged period under attack from missiles.
See, now you know what the master stroke was, right? They need these empires to do their heavy lifting for them. They need their manpower. They need their resources. They need their soldiers and slaves, right? They can't sustain this on their own. And since they have successfully done this in the past, they think they can keep on doing it. Whether it's the Rothschilds, Oppenheimers, Warburgs, or Sassoons, South Africa with the British Empire, mineral rights, gemstones, Boer wars against the Dutch Afrikaners, right? And of course, the indigenous people to loot their resources, or turning a nation of China into heroin addicts during the opium wars, right? For the sake of the Sassoons. Well, now it's for the sake of Israel. This is nothing new. The point I'm trying to make here is the West have been soldiers and slaves for Zion for quite a long time already, right? So when you have the resources that you can draw from in terms of manpower of the Americans, of the Brits, of the Western Europeans to do your fucking dirty work for you in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria, in Somalia, in Sudan, right? Across the world. Now, the situation is a little bit different. Can they still pull off another war in terms of a proxy war for Israel by using the Americans and the Europeans? Yeah, they probably could. They probably could. Not that it's going to achieve a victory. It's not. Let me ask you this, guys. Was Afghanistan a victory? Taliban's still there, right? Was Iraq a victory? Is Libya a victory? Was Syria a victory? You guys don't get it. The media's not going to tell you. They're running on a string of L's. They haven't gotten a victory in a very long time. Now, what they can do is murder a lot of civilians, destroy a lot of civilian infrastructure, and set countries back a decade. Yeah, they can do that. They're capable of that. But can they impose their will on the ground in Damascus, in Beirut? No, they can't. No, they can't. So, how much more can you take? Well, we saw what Aaron Bushnell did. This Air Force vet burned himself, self-immolation in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. And you just to illustrate, just to show you how utterly disgusting and despicable the enemies of humanity are. Have you been listening to the comments? I mean, I couldn't, after the first 20, I couldn't anymore. So disgusting. Absolutely fucking makes my skin crawl. You feel like you have to take a shower. Piece of shit, terrorist, lover, Hamas supporter. Oh, well, no big loss. I have no sympathy for a terrorist supporter. Not an ounce or a shred of decency, compassion, empathy. Are they even capable of it? Are they even capable of it? Yet, we're supposed to watch Schindler's List and read the Diary of Anne Frank and all the reports from Elie Wiesel and the Holocaust Museum testimonials and just be in a puddle of tears. And we should extend all our humanity to these poor people, yet they don't reciprocate, do they? Why is that? We ask, walk a mile in my shoes. They won't even take a step, half a step. Why is that? Because they believe in double standards, because they are racist supremacists. And they believe that we are not even human fucking beings, but beasts in human form that only exist to serve them. That is why, my friends. It's atrocious. It's disgusting. It's despicable. Pure and simple. Pure and simple. People try to figure this out. What's there to figure out? What's there to figure out? You don't count. They place no value on non-Jewish life. They say things like, there's a bigger difference between a Jew and a Gentile than a Gentile and an ape. They say shit like one Jewish thumb is worth 1 million Gentiles, is more valuable than 1 million Gentiles. They say all these charming things, and we're supposed to believe that they're human rights activists, champions. They believe in egalitarianism when they clearly do not. But they'll gaslight us and say, oh, it's a fringe, Bert. You're talking about a fringe part. It's not the big consensus. Well, we see it manifested in the three-dimensional world in the form of wars and aggression and tyranny and oppression and exploitation and brutalization against our children and our fifth column social engineering subversion to corrode our societies from within, to blur the lines between genders, to assault the nuclear family, to pit mother against daughter, father against son, wife against husband. We see it every fucking day. And what do? They call this guy making the ultimate sacrifice, the ultimate expression of his dissent and disgust, and forfeiting his own life to demonstrate his opposition to this genocide in Gaza. He sets himself on fire. The Buddhists did it in Vietnam. The Buddhist monks did it in Vietnam. A pacifist Mennonite did it in Vietnam in front of Robert McNamara's office in Washington, D.C. to protest the Vietnam. A Mennonite. And now we have Aaron Bushnell. Rest in peace, Aaron. And you can't just say, if you don't have anything nice to say, if you don't agree with what he did, and you're a Zionist, fucking racist, Jewish supremacist, then just keep your mouth shut than to speak ill of the dead. No class, no fucking shame. Just nasty, despicable motherfuckers.
Every day, day after day, continuing. So
Who has,
it's a question of that, the balance of strength, if you like, of endurance between the two sides.
Who has penetrated the other side's territory more deeply? The Israelis into Lebanon or Hezbollah into northern Israel, whether you consider it northern Israel or not, whether you're talking about the West Bank or just Israel? Who's been more active up there?
Well, Hezbollah began this by, it did establish, let's call it a buffer zone inside Israel, about 10 kilometers deep and about 100 kilometers in length. And then now Israel is preparing to take its buffer zone up to the Litani. And now they're signaling that they may want more than that because their recent strikes have been 40 kilometers inside Lebanon in Sidon, or Sidon, however you pronounce it, Sidon for English speakers. And that's a Sunni town. It's nothing to do with Hezbollah. They don't keep their weapons there. This was the base of Rafiq Hariri and the Sunni alliance predominantly. So it's signaling they want to change the rules of the game. And I expect that Hezbollah, they're thinking about it, will probably extend their buffer zone inside Israel further, displacing more Israelis from northern Israel to the hotels around the Dead Sea. And indeed, Israel has already started moving its, if you like, its no-go area, where Israeli citizens are not allowed to go into the north of Israel, been extending that, I think, in preparation for the next stage that's probably coming.
Over the weekend, Amos Hochstein, he's the American negotiator, even though he was born in Israel and fought in the IDF and came to the U.S., became an American citizen, worked his way up through the State Department. He's President Biden's chief negotiator over there. I guess the proper way to describe him is he's supervising numerous negotiations, said the settlers must return. On the same weekend, Secretary Blinken said, we're changing the policy of the United States government from the Trump years. The settlements are illegal. Which is it?
No, we call them settlers, but not all of them were settlers in the formal way that they were in occupied territory. But these are the people that live in the north. And what Hochstein was saying, and it's quite interesting that he calls them settlers and not residents of the north, but he's saying they must come back. And you can understand why Israel insists on that, because, I mean, you know, what is the Zionist project if Israelis or Jews cannot live freely on the land of Israel and have security? And that security exploded on the 7th of October. And now the residents are too fearful of living anywhere near Hezbollah on one side anywhere near Gaza on the other side, and they've got to find a solution to this. At the same time, they want the whole of the region to be more frightened of Israel. That's their deterrence. That's their main weapon. And this is what is in jeopardy. They've got to try, in their view, if you like, a sort of a biblical view of how to restore deterrence, which is shock and awe, essentially. The shock and awe that we saw in Baghdad and other places. They've got to make people frightened of Israeli military might. And so Hezbollah is going to be the example, if you like, the trial for this this test. I think this is a huge gamble because it is partly built on hubris that the Israeli Defense Force is so wonderful, it's going to be able to do this. But is it? We'll see. Hezbollah might have some surprises for them.
It's great. It's great. Judge Andrew, right? Alistair Crook, Ritter, Mearsheimer, Colonel McGregor. Even though McGregor is the most lukewarm, but they're all rooting against Israel. You notice this, right? You can feel it in the commentary. The whole world is rooting against Israel. How can you, in your fucking right mind, pretend the side murdering children and civilians are the good guys? What kind of fucking mental gymnastics and acrobatics you must have to contort yourself into a pretzel to rationalize that? Our side, folks, we're on the right side of history, of humanity, of what's right and just in the world. We're fighting the good fight. There is no more noble cause. As I am here, not well, but I am driven. I'm not, I feel like I could just go to bed right now and sleep for the rest of the day. That's how I feel right now. But I am compelled to be here to fight this good fight. There's nothing more important. There's nothing more important. Forget about the existential extinction level event. That's a possibility. What kind of world do you want your children and your grandchildren to grow up in? A world where we can have an unbearable, insufferable occupation where people are treated like animals, less than, under tyranny and oppression. You know what all these famous revolutionaries say? We're not free until everyone is free. Whatever happened to that? We can just consign the Palestinians to languish and die and to be erased from the memory. You know who has a legitimate right to all these mantras about never forgetting and never again? It's the Palestinians. The Palestinians should copyright those mantras. They're living by it. The fake state. Disgusting. You guys have anything to say? Go ahead and make a request. And then what we'll do is we'll get a couple of people in the queue, and then we'll open up the phone lines for your participation.
That when running.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to take your take on what's going on in Latin America. They're trying to get, for example, Milei in Argentina, in El Salvador they elected Bukele again, and Brazil, the opposition, it's also pro-Israel,
right.
Bolsonaro, and Mexico. What do you think their attempt is into?
Well, I mean, listen, they know they've written off the global South pretty much, and this Milei guy, he's going to fail. He's going to fail. And the El Salvador guy, I don't know. I mean, you got a very sympathetic, traditionally, government in El Salvador with Daniel Ortega, the communists.
But they elected the Bekele, his, Israeli shell. So
Yeah, he's an Israeli shell. Listen, if it's up to them, they'll fill up South America with Israeli shells. The people of South America are smarter than that. They haven't forgotten their colonial past.
You see what happened in Brazil, right? So when they stood against Israel, so they did the protest, and the opposition, Bolsonaro, was raising the Israel flag, and they asked also some protester, "Why you stand with Israel?" She said, "Because they are like us, the Christians like us." I thought, I know they are not Christian, they are Jews. Yeah, they thought, but yeah, they're still like us. It's just.
Well, Bolsonaro is going to go to jail, and Lulu is their #1 nemesis on the continent. So I wouldn't worry about Brazil, brother.
And Mexico, they have a fully Jewish candidate as well.
No, the Mexican president is sympathetic to the Palestinians.
No, the candidate they want to elect, it's Shambon. She's a woman.
She's not going to get elected, bro.
Yeah. But they're trying, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
they're plotting something.
Yeah.
Without there being some consensus in the Oval Office or the West Wing or Foggy Bottom, where the State Department is, why would they say now something contrary to what the previous administration said and contrary to what they said for the first 3 years of this administration in the midst of a great crisis for Israel and the so-called alliance between Biden and Netanyahu, that the settlements are illegal?
They need to, because this is the cornerstone of their policy of trying to lower the level of violence. They need to get, if you like, first of hostages coming out and someone who's going to take over Gaza as they see. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's the policy. And therefore, to do this, what they need most of all is to give some idea that a Palestinian state is going to come. Because without that, the Saudis are not going to budge an inch. It's been clear. They've actually put it in writing on a formal text. No diplomatic relations with us until you sign up to the 2002 agreement, and also that you leave Gaza and the ceasefire is complete. And of course, we're nowhere near it. So they're trying to suggest, now go back from what Pompeo originally tried to say, that that these settlements were legal, to say, no, the settlements in the, if you like, occupied territories of West Bank and Gaza are illegal. And it's important because also at the same time, the Court of Justice is looking at the question about whether the Israeli position of settling occupied territories is internationally legal, or that they should, under law, evacuate from those regions. Of course, Israel has no intention of doing that, no intention of evacuating from the West Bank. There are too many people there.
How pressing a problem is it for Prime Minister Netanyahu's government of the displaced settlers, those who've left voluntarily in order to avoid the violence? I mean, about a month ago, you told us you thought there might be as many as 250,000 of them in Israeli hotels at the expense of the Israeli government. I mean, how much longer can that go on?
Well, it can't. And this is why I'm talking about there's two ways of war. And that the one way from the resistance and the Iranian policy is this attrition, the squeezing of Israel. And it's also financial and economic squeezing that's taken place. The last quarter, the GDP in Israel dropped 20%. Not all of that was financing these people in the hotels. Some of this was because so many reservists had been called up for duty and were no longer available for work. But it's certainly having an impact on the hike.
They're not even talking about the 500,000 people that left the country. Do you guys understand this? I mean, this is significant, right? And what's their biggest thing? That's their biggest thing is numbers, immigration. They want more Jews. They want more Jews, right? They have commercials all over the world. Come, if you're a Jew, we'll give you a free house. We'll kick a Palestinian family out of their house and we'll give it to you. Right? In the West Bank. They want more. They want more numbers, the demographics. They want to increase their demographic majority at all costs. It's their paramount issue, and they're losing people, hemorrhaging people. This is a huge concern for the enemies of humanity. A huge concern.
The tech sector, which is largely closed down, this sort of Silicon Valley that runs between Tel Aviv and Haifa. I mean, many of those firms are just not functioning. They've actually, I don't know that they'll restart again at the end of whatever's happened. But I mean, 20% drop in GDP. And then at the same time, Haifa port, Eilat port is closed. Haifa and also Ashkelon are both being attacked by missiles. Not now by the ones in Iraq, which did promise to do that. But as I say, the Iranians said, okay, let's just, let's not escalate the intensity at this point. That might come later.
What will happen in 2 weeks at the beginning of Ramadan, when a huge number of Arab folks want to enter the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem? The right-wing fanatics and Prime Minister Netanyahu's cabinet has said that absolutely can't happen. But even Ariel Sharon permitted it to happen.
I mean, what's going to happen then, we don't know, but this is crucial. I mean, this is a war to a certain extent about Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's called now the conflict of Al-Aqsa, the war. And the last, if you like, the last conflict with Israel was called the Al-Aqsa Intifada. And
this is very smart and has a lot of utility for the Palestinians, right? Because Haram al-Sharif, right, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the compound, is the third holiest site in Islam. So this is going to resonate with every one of these 2.3 billion Muslims worldwide. And I don't understand why they go after Islam and they smear the prophet and they demean it, and they want to highlight that it's a war against civilizations, it's a war against Islam. It's full mask off. There has been an active war against Islam since 9/11. But they would go out of their way to say, oh, this isn't a war against Islam, it's against Islamic fascist terrorists. And they would make this point, try to make this point clear. They're not bothering to do that anymore. I'm talking about on the Israeli propaganda side. They're actively promoting this because they want to foment discontent and strife within the world, right? To get you on side so that you support the genocide of these Palestinians, because the majority are Muslim. Even though they have the second biggest Christian population in the Arab world, second only to, is it second or third? Only to Lebanon. Lebanon and Palestine, and I think then Egypt, right? So they want to divide. They want to sow strife. They want to get Ishmael and Esau at each other's throat because it serves them, their interests and their agenda.
Clearly, Ben Gvir, who said, well, no Arab will be allowed onto the Temple Mount Haram al-Sharif, where Al-Aqsa Mosque is during this period. And this is where they go every day, if you like, to pray. So it becomes absolutely crucial. And if this is stopped or there's going to be a fight about this, don't forget this is the month of fasting. And people spend their whole day largely not working, watching television, seeing the images coming in from Gaza, getting angry and angry. I've been in Ramallah at that time when this is happening during the Second Intifada. And the atmosphere becomes very different. It's really harsh atmosphere that takes place there. And it is a dangerous point. And actually, I think people have been warning the White House, this thing could blow up this Ramadan, because it's a holy month, people not allowed to pray, not allowed to go to it's like saying you're not allowed to go to the Vatican. The Vatican forbids anyone to go to it. This is something people do. At Easter, people come to the Vatican. And at Easter, Arabs go to the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount Haram al-Sharif. That's how it's always been, and there'll be a big blow-up if this is prevented, and particularly if violence is used against those trying to reach the mosque in order to pray. They're going there to pray.
Are you, with your extraordinary knowledge of international diplomacy and from your place in Italy, able to assess at all President Biden's pretty drastic domestic political problems in the state of Michigan in the United States, which has the largest population of Arabs, and almost all of them are Democrats, and it seems as though many will vote against him in the primary. The primary there is largely symbolic. The person running against him doesn't stand a chance of taking the Democratic nomination, but the president is torn between his being wedded at the hip to the donor class and to the Israeli leadership on one hand, and to and needing the votes of young left-wing progressives on the other. The latter, of course, condemning the U.S. funding of the Israelis in Gaza.
And it's not just an Arab revolt. 80% of Democrats are in favor of a ceasefire. Yeah, you know, you got to be some kind of chicken-pecking Uncle Tom Arab to support Biden at this point, after, you know, he's a co-belligerent participating in a genocide, obviously. You know, what is his approval rate among those people? Probably, I don't know, 1 or 2%. There's 1 or 2 in every 100 dumb fucks out there that are race traitors, Judases, whatever, Uncle Toms, Benedict Arnolds, whatever you want to call them. I like to reference them as dumb fucks. Personally, myself, that's what I go with.
So do you see any change? I mean, the only change in the Biden administration, the only change that you and I have noticed was what Secretary Blinken said over the weekend. That's not going to change anything on the ground, but diplomatically and legally, it's significant if the U.S. considers those settlements to be illegal. Is there a creeping realization, in your view, by the White House that its financing of this slaughter in Gaza is catastrophic to the interests of the White House itself?
Absolutely. It's very clear that that's the case. Of course, that statement. I mean, the other, you know, effort to sort of, if you like, put under sanctions for settlers has no impression, makes no impression on Muslims watching what's happening in Gaza every day on Al Jazeera, on Al Arabiya television. Of course not. It's not making any impression. And what makes the impression is that America continues, just as it did in 1973, to provide an air bridge supplying smart bombs, dumb bombs, weapons all the day, every day into Israel. And they all know who they're intended for. And don't forget, it was the Israeli president himself who signed one of those bombs. I mean, he actually put his sort of name and signature and good wishes on one of those bombs that was about to be dropped onto Gaza. They, people, I mean, you know, to be told that 4 settlers have been sanctioned by the White House is absolutely irrelevant. And it's going to make a difference in Michigan and in those other swing states, which has quite a high proportion of Arab constituency.
What a mess. Well, Alistair, thank you so much for having your thumb on the pulse.
Now, think about that. Even though Trump is the biggest Zionist slave president in history, he's going to get their support, right? As a protest vote. Because they want to make sure by hook or by crook that Biden is dispensed a big L. They're voting against Biden. They're not voting for Trump, is my point. That's the point here in the story. As the Talmud tells us, the older will serve the younger. And this is an allegory that you all need to understand and to take to heart and to live your life by as Gentiles in this world. You only exist to serve the satanic people of Israel. Without that, you have no place in this world. And that is your role as the descendants of Esau, the ruddy, hairy prince, firstborn son of Isaac, who is consigned to serve Hated by God, by the way. And this is why he has to do the hunting and the schlepping and all the work and all the physical labor. He's got to do all the physical labor because he's a soldier and slave for his younger brother, Yaakov, Jacob, who became Israel. And this allegory is manifested in the world today as the Gentiles serve the Jews. And you will serve not just as you worship Jesus, but you should worship all Jews as you worship Jesus. And that's the final mission, to heal this world, to correct the universe, and to bring about this kosher clown world, this world of our own. Baruch Hashem! Baruch atah Adonai! And that's why you have to legalize pedophilia and lower the age of consent and hypersexualize our children to normalize it. Right? Now, sorry, Jews, we're not going to participate. We do not consent. It's not going to happen. Not in this lifetime.
Different ways to understand the withdrawal from Iraq and Afghanistan and so on. The first way is that we need to understand that the Iraqis voted in their parliament to eject the United States. So it wasn't a voluntary withdrawal. The United States was kicked out of Iraq. The landlord said, we are going to evict you. Now, they didn't leave northern Iraq. And the reason they didn't leave northern Iraq is they've been there actually since before Saddam Hussein's removal from office. This goes back to 1991. And those military entanglement with various Kurdish political parties continues. Okay? But they were kicked out of Iraq. The United States was also kicked out of Afghanistan. The Taliban had a military victory. They roared into Kabul, from having controlled most of the country. So those were not withdrawals by choice. They were removed. Farid is an embarrassment to his great father, who was one of the important nationalist scholars in India. It's an embarrassment for him to say pivot from the Middle East. Brother, there was no pivot. They were thrown out. I mean, it's different. Pivot, suggests a choice. You made a choice, a strategic choice. You were ejected. Let's face the fact, okay? Which is why, for instance, in Syed Hassan Nasrallah's speech, in the early days of this conflict, 2 weeks into it, in October, Mr. Nasrallah pointed out that the United States was defeated in Iraq and in Afghanistan. And he said, don't threaten us, we will defeat you. I mean, maybe it's bragado speaking, but he was factual in that. Secondly, it's the US influence that has actually deteriorated in the region. And that has got very little to do with the region per se and more to do with geopolitics. I mean, the United States...
VJ is fucking sharper than a tack. This guy has his shit wrapped tight, man. Just facts after facts after facts without any kind of spin, any kind of propaganda. I really appreciate his analysis.
Simply doesn't have the economic power or the economic ambition that, for instance, China has in that region. Saudi Arabia, for instance, has pivoted to China away from the United States, not because of some military disengagement by the US. US bases, as you rightly said, are still there in Bahrain, in Qatar, in other parts of the Gulf. It's not like the United States broke down their bases. No, they're still militarily there. But countries in the Gulf, just to take the desert Arabs as a case in point, countries in the Gulf are looking to China because China has a more ambitious economic project and more money. They are even looking to India, actually, rather than the United States. In fact, the deal that was cut, the Middle East, India, Europe corridor, which is now defunct, was not so much about the United States, but it was about the interest in India. India is an economy that's growing. It has its internal challenges, but there is economic growth. Mr. Gautama Adani owns the ports in Greece, in Haifa, and he has the ownership of the port in Gujarat, which would have been in that corridor. Adani owned at least 3 to 4 of the ports that were in that corridor. I often think it's not a Middle East, Europe, India corridor, but a Europe, Middle East, Europe, Adani corridor, because he would have been an enormous beneficiary. People don't realize he owns a port in Greece and in Haifa, not just the port in Gujarat. Anyway, these countries are pivoting away from the United States for economic reasons because of the lack of economic ability of the United States to drive an agenda there. So in that sense, it's not that you can say, well, the US has made some decision to disengage from the region. I don't think so. What's happened is a military defeat in Iraq, important defeat, or rather an ejection by the parliament, but a defeat in Afghanistan certainly.
What kind of metrics do we need to establish to show the deterioration of American influence, especially in the Middle East? How about losing conflict after conflict, being on the wrong side of the most important and significant policy matter that has plagued the region for nearly 1,000 years, that has kept the shackles of kosher servitude tethered to the Palestinian people for nearly a century? You think this is a winner? No, it's a loser. It's a loser on any kind of category or metric you want to analyze.
Strategic defeat in Syria. They were not able to bring down the government of Bashar al-Assad, even though troops remain in northern Syria. It was a major strategic defeat because they were not able to, in a sense, create that corridor of U.S. power that they wanted, put pressure on Lebanon. If the U.S. had been able to overthrow Bashar al-Assad, they would have gone in and basically tried to clean out Hezbollah. And that would have created a big strategic opportunity for the United States. All of that wasn't available. They were removed from Iraq. They were defeated in Afghanistan and in Syria. And they don't have the economic muscle to drive an agenda with the desert Arabs. So that's the reason they pivoted. Their sole political, power, pressure is in Israel, Morocco, couple of the smaller principalities, maybe Bahrain to some extent, and in a kind of convoluted way, Egypt. This is where the United States continues to have some, forward influence. And certainly Israel and Morocco, which is why Trump pushed the Abraham Accords with Israel, Morocco, and Bahrain. That was the axis of normalization with the Israelis. Very clear that was the agenda, to strengthen those that remain when everybody else is lost, including Jordan in some small way, particularly during this conflict.
Well, if the U.S. doesn't back up Israel, Israel can't even keep up the war in Gaza, much less a wider Middle East war. The war in Gaza is supported by U.S. munitions almost on a daily basis. So if the U.S. cuts support, Israel has to stop, period. It's not a matter of extending to Lebanon, the Red Sea, Iran. That would be a major, major war. By the way, a major war not only for Israel, but a major war for the United States as well. And the U.S. has just sent one carrier group back from the region back to the United States. So it's a signal that the U.S. is not at all interested in a wider war. There are crazy U.S. politicians like Lindsey Graham who loves war anytime, anywhere. And he said we need to bomb Iran. He used even more extreme language. But basically, this is not the position of the Pentagon, and it's not the position of the American people. You raised the question of whether the public has some say in foreign policy. In general, not very much. But being an election year this year, it's strange, but foreign policy is much more on the agenda because there's a sense that Biden is incompetent, has lost control, that the U.S. is pulled into too many conflicts. And this is weighing on public opinion, especially because Donald Trump has been against funding Ukraine and the Republican base is really not in favor of this spending or particularly in terms of these wars. It's complicated, but I think in general, the mood in the United States is, my God, we've got enough problems at home. What the hell are we doing getting into more and more and more of these wars? And Biden looks very weak and inconsequential, and he's a poor communicator in general. So this is a time when American public opinion is having an effect, especially in the Republican Party, which is not really wanting to fund Biden's adventures abroad.
Israel obviously is a critical player for the United States because it's the only power in the region with which the U.S. has a common language, cultural language. When they go to Saudi Arabia, or they go to the Emirates, or they go to Bahrain, or they go to Egypt, or they go to Jordan, they're speaking in their minds, they're speaking to the 7th century. Whereas when they're with Israel, they're speaking with their college roommates. It's a totally different relationship. And also there's so much intelligence cooperation and so much revolving door between the Israelis and the Americans. They all know each other on a first name basis. They're all friends. And there's a belief, not entirely wrong, but not entirely correct either, that Israelis have the technological competence, the mental know-how, such that they represent an entirely different breed than the so-called Arab allies. So, for those reasons, Israel remains a fundamental factor in U.S. strategic thinking.
What about the control, Dr. Finkelstein? You know, I love this guy, but he doesn't get into, well, he does. He does get into the manipulation, the control. But, you know, I think that's a factor. Now, in terms of what he said, yeah, everything he said is accurate, right? A lot of these Israelis have very strong, deep roots to the United States. Many of them are former Americans, right? That have migrated, that have made Aliyah, and vice versa, like Jonathan Greenblatt, right? Who came from Israel to America, the dual citizenship, the cultural stuff is correct. But in terms of the values that they like to conflate, Judeo-Christian values, do we incarcerate children in America? Do we shoot civilians, unarmed civilians protesting in America? It happened a couple of times. Kent State. And it started a fucking firestorm of anti-government activity. We don't do that kind of shit. We don't interrogate 3-year-olds. We don't put children in front of military courts and incarcerate toddlers. We don't shoot people in the balls, civilians in the balls. We do occupy. We have some commonality there. We're occupiers in Syria and northern Iraq, around the world. We're very militaristic. This is true. But we have a common cultural kind of thing going on because our pop culture and social engineering is dominated by Jewry so much in this country. It's unavoidable. It's inescapable. This is all true. And it's not all good. Much of it is very bad in terms of the LGBTQ, Fabian socialist, Frankfurt School, Tavistock, Judaic bullshit that's rammed down our throats. The multi-gender verse, the toxic masculinity, the sexual ambiguity, the blurring the lines. Not very good. Actually quite fucking destructive. It all tastes like matzah on a Shabbos evening, does it not?
I don't know where that's going to lead us. The Israelis obviously want to attack Iran. And the U.S. is reluctant to take that step so far. And I don't know where that's going to go. I think the U.S. is probably more realistic than the Israelis about taking that step. I think the Israelis are completely insane from a, not in a moral sense. When I hear people like Benny Morris, the Israeli historian, keeps pounding those war drums to attack Iran, I really have to ask myself, are these people so completely detached from reality? Hezbollah will annihilate Israel. Israel's a tiny place. The Hezbollah has a very high level of technical competence, both in terms of the armaments they have and in terms of their ability to use them. Do they really believe that they could survive a Hezbollah attack in the event that the U.S. and Israel target Iran? I think that's completely nuts. Hezbollah knows every single vital nerve in Israeli society like the back of their hands. They know exactly what to target.
They're on a suicide mission, and they want to take us down with them. And if they keep on escalating, if they don't if Israeli intransigence persists, and they keep climbing up this escalatory ladder, and they hook us in, by hook or by crook, it could potentially lead to fucking an extinction level event. And they don't care. It's like they don't care. If they go down, they're more than happy to take us all down with them. Do you get it? If they can't maintain their ill-gotten gains, they're ready to sacrifice us all. We go down, you all go down with us. That's their fucking attitude. That's their mentality. It's stated in their doctrine. The Samson option. And all these fucking all these people that are getting apologetics. Oh, it's just the Arabs that are going to get destroyed. No, dumb fuck. No, dumb fuck. They'll target Europe. Europe will go down too. You get it? Who knows? I've read shit about suitcase bombs in America. Oh, Bert, how could you say that? They're our greatest ally, our indispensable, the indispensable nation. Oh, well, they've attacked us before numerous times. What the fuck are you talking about? Not just the Lavon affair, not just the Kennedys, not just fucking 9/11 or the 93 bombing, or was it 91 bombing? Ramzi Youssef bombing. It's tried and true. I take these people very seriously. Do you think you're going to be spared? If they go down, you don't think they're going to fucking take us all down with them? Just because they can't kill us and murder us all doesn't mean they won't try. Shizzle. Hello.
Albert, I wrote a really powerful poem for Palestine. Is it okay if I share it?
Sure, man. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you. It's called The End of Complacence. I was becoming enlightened and you broke my concentration. I looked the other way when it came to inflation. I went to work and participated in your illegal taxation. I ignored you even though you were in my location. You condemned me to a modest life and a mundane vocation. I turned off the TV and ignored what you did to the Haitians. But then I learned about your sinister occupation and what these people had to face for generations. It triggered something within me and I showed up to the occasion. You demonic, deceitful, demented spawn of Satan. I kept out of your bullshit and by God I've been patient. You thought I would settle for a life just living to pay rent, but then you bombed little children that lived in a tent. The world forced to bear and witness your crimes that were blatant. You made so many lose hope, questioning what's left to have faith in. Starved the whole population and won't even let aid in. Trapped in a concentration camp. Yeah, we know they were caged in. Children trying to gather flour off of the pavement. The stench of death is now a common fragrance. People's homes were abandoned and left vacant. Your leaders called them animals. Just look at their statements. And so many other crimes just riddled with flagrants. The world woke up and started rejecting complacence. Look at how much damage one of us could do with a pen. You try to control the narrative with your soulless agents, comprised mostly of the people who said never again. The vile things they said made us question if you paid them. The talking points promoting genocide and mayhem. How stupid do you think we are? Are we just laymen? You did not care if they prayed to Allah or said amen. You have no regard for life the way you just slayed them. You will be held accountable for your participation. Don't try to validate what you did. There's no justification. I'm committed for life now. I won't take a vacation. And there's thousands like me within every nation. Thank you.
Group clap. Wonderful. Shizzle, that's awesome, bro. If you got that body and you want to copy and paste it in the thread, go ahead. Well done, my friend. Tremendous. Well done. Let's all give him a big fucking hand clap. Let's give a big hand clap for Shizzle, man. That was fucking awesome, bro. That's how you do it, man. How do you fight back? How do you participate? How do you make a contribution? Shizzle just showed you how. Brilliant, brother. Strength and honor to my brother Shizzle. Good job. Excellent. Outstanding. Outstanding.
That will turn out to be terminal. So I can't even grasp, as Oprah would say, I can't wrap my mind around what goes through the heads of these people. When I hear people like Benny Morris, I ask myself, have you not noticed that you can't even inflict a military defeat on Hamas? That it's already 4.5 months and you haven't been able to successfully target a single Hamas leader in Gaza? That you don't even know where they are? That in this tiny, tiny, tiny parcel of land, this pinprick on the world's map, this grain of sand in the Sahara, with all of your super sophisticated.
I love when he goes into like this poetic prose. It's fucking awesome, man. Norm is a gifted speaker. I wish he was a little bit louder and less subdued, but I really enjoy his style of elocution.
Sophisticated spy technology and all of what's called human intelligence in Gaza, all of those supporters of the Palestinian Authority who are now your spies, that you don't even know where the hostages are. You don't have a clue where they are. And you think you're going to defeat Hezbollah and Iran? Or you think you'll use your nuclear weapons and get away with it? That Nasrallah won't understand that if you nuke Iran, Hezbollah is next, and he won't preemptively finish you off? I don't get these people.
I don't get these people. You don't get these people. The world doesn't get these people. And you know what? The fact that we're indulging Israel in this lunacy, in this insanity, is unforgivable. It's going to cost Dementia Joe, Genocide Joe the election. And Baruch Hashem. He doesn't deserve another 4 years. The guy's fucking clueless. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know where the fuck he is. Oh, no, his memory's great. There's no cognitive impairment. He's just fine, Bert. What the hell are you talking about? Oh, I don't know. He called Sisi, the president of Mexico, fucking last week. What the fuck is going on here? It's Clown World. It's Clown World on steroids. a circle jerk, dystopian kosher clown world, fucking Judaic matrix. Hello.
No, not having military knowledge, but certain things are pretty obvious. They've not been able to defeat Hamas. They weren't able to do so in 2008-9 during Cast-Led. They weren't able to do so during Pillar of Defense. They weren't able to do so during Protective Edge. And with no restraints whatsoever, none. And after 4.5 months, they've not been able to do it again. And you think you can take on Iran and the party of God? Doesn't make sense to me. We're in a very dark period. Because I do, as I said, I think Israel has a legitimate fear. I mean, many people aren't going to like what I'm saying, but I have to be honest about these things. There is now a view among the Arabs that Israel can be defeated. And Israel doesn't see any other option except to restore their deterrence capacity. And that means inflicting a military defeat on Hezbollah and inflicting significant enough death and destruction as to deter anybody from following the lead from Hamas.
Do you see any change of attitude among the U.S. allies in the Gulf with the recent?
Oh, I'm sure they're rooting for Israel to win.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because any victory, any defeat or any even partial defeat for Israel, they see as a victory for what's called the axis of resistance. So they won. Look.
Yeah, the Gulf Arabs, Egypt and Jordan and Saudi Arabia are not on side. Right? They're not on side. They have made their deals with the devil. That's just a fact of life, kids. It annoys me to no end to have Egyptian ancestry. It does. In this time, knowing that the country of my birth and my forefathers and my ancestors is now on Team Evil. And I live in America, which is the co-captain of Team Evil. It bothers me, as I'm sure it bothers most of you, as it bothers hundreds of millions of others throughout the fucking Western Hemisphere. We are a part of a genocide, and we never signed on for it. Not in our names. We do not consent. But does it matter? No, you're a voice in the wilderness. You don't fucking count. Oh, but Bert, we get to make our voices heard in November of this year when we have our election. Oh, is that so? Because if Trump wins or whoever wins, they're going to do a 180 on Israel? It's going to get its comeuppance? There'll be justice for the Palestinians and the rest of the world that has looked on fucking helplessly for the last fucking 3/4 of a century? No. There is no such prospect in store for us, my friends. There needs to be a radical change. This attached to the Israel at the hip, this fucking codependency, co-enable, whatever you want to call it. It's not a symbiotic relationship. It's not reciprocated. It's completely one-sided, as it always has been. We subsidize their existence. We fund their military. We do all the heavy lifting. We protect them in the UN. It's not a relationship of co-equals. The nature of this relationship is
victory for what's called the axis of resistance. So they won. Look.
Yeah, the Gulf Arabs, Egypt and Jordan and Saudi Arabia are not on side. Right? They're not on side. They have made their deals with the devil. That's just a fact of life, kids. It annoys me to no end to have Egyptian ancestry. It does. In this time, knowing that the country of my birth and my forefathers and my ancestors is now on Team Evil. And I live in America, which is the co-captain of Team Evil. It bothers me, as I'm sure it bothers most of you, as it bothers hundreds of millions of others throughout the fucking Western Hemisphere. We are a part of a genocide, and we never signed on for it. Not in our names. We do not consent. But does it matter? No, you're a voice in the wilderness. You don't fucking count. Oh, but Bert, we get to make our voices heard in November of this year when we have our election. Oh, is that so? Because if Trump wins or whoever wins, they're going to do a 180 on Israel? It's going to get its comeuppance? There'll be justice for the Palestinians and the rest of the world that has looked on fucking helplessly for the last fucking 3/4 of a century? No. There is no such prospect in store for us, my friends. There needs to be a radical change. This attached to the Israel at the hip, this fucking codependency, co-enable, whatever you want to call it. It's not a symbiotic relationship. It's not reciprocated. It's completely one-sided, as it always has been. We subsidize their existence. We fund their military. We do all the heavy lifting. We protect them in the UN. It's not a relationship of co-equals. The nature of this relationship is master and slave. Don't get it twisted, motherfucker. Brother B, hello.
Did you call me, Al? This is Brother B.
Yeah, you can't hear me? I just said Brother B, hello. You can hear that?
Well, I'm on two devices, so I think one is...
Then if you can't hear that.
No, it's not you. I'm on two devices. I switch over to my phone when I see the speaker thing come on, and then it just says, I just hear you say hello, so I didn't hear you acknowledge me. I'm trying to practice some self-control and some decorum. I don't want to just...
Appreciate it, man.
Anyhow, if I was a Vitch man, matchmaker, make me a match. A little diddler on the roof for Rabbi Shmuley there. A little diddler on the roof. But anyhow,
I don't know if you're aware of this fact, but his daughter makes the slickest lube you could possibly slap on your Johnson, Brother B.
Oh, and I would definitely take it to the lab because their agenda. It probably makes the goyim sterile. I definitely wouldn't trust that. But anyhow, over the weekend, I think it was yesterday, I sent you about Vanessa Beasley. She's a correspondent, reporter, journalist over in Syria. So take a look at that when you get a chance. And I was listening to Last American Vagabond. He had a good show about, Israel, versus Nazism, like you said the other day, if it helps wake people up to use that, even though we know, the difference, but he gave a shout out to Adam Green, a positive shout out. And speaking of Adam, well wishes for Adam. I know he posted on his Twitter that he was sick and he went to the emergency room. So, so all the Abrahamic faiths here, all the Buddhists, all the atheists, well wishes for our brother Adam Green, man. We need him. We need him in the fight. Amen. Amen and amen. And I was on last night. Tommy Sotomayor had a space. And the first one he did was about should blacks distinguish the difference between Jews and whites, and it was majority, I would say 99%. Yes, they should distinguish, the Jew and a Gentile, like
right,
even
because they do it on their end. They absolutely. It's almost probably 100% make a distinction.
Well, and they do the Jedi mind trick. It's like when something like George Floyd goes down, they come out saying we as white people, but then when you say that they're white, they go no, we're Jewish, we're the chosen, we're the priestly class.
Right. When they want to virtue signal,
yes,
they come out and they say, "Hey, fellow whites, we're really horrible. We've done horrible things to the blacks." And we need to do everything in our power to, make things right. And these cops need to be defunded and put in jail forever for a horrible thing. I mean, it was wrong no matter what. But
of course,
but the dude was not a fucking saint, right?
Exactly.
And this is the thing, right? This is the power of the media. Remember what they did to Kyle Rittenhouse? Remember what they did to Nick Sandman, right?
Is that the guy who did the Indian?
These guys, they can make the villain, they can make the hero look like the villain, just like Malcolm X said. And that's what they did in both of those cases. And they can make the villain look like a hero. And that's what they did with George Floyd. Okay?
Yes, they did.
We see the power of the media.
Tommy got a kick out of what I said. We all got to stop watching the Talmud Vision. He thought that was so funny. I brought you up, in the conversation to check your space out. And Adam Green, I gave you guys a shout out. Now, Tommy, the last time, about a year ago or so, I think I brought this up before. He went on a tirade about what was that one black guy that had to go he had to go meet with the rap Nick Cannon. And Tommy went off. Man, Tommy
send him an invite. Tell him to get his ass into the space.
I will. I'll see if I can. Because some people I can give invites, and some I can't. It's like it's weird. But even though I follow them, maybe if they don't follow me back or something like that, I don't know. But he got buried, and he was addressing that, and he did a few years before that when he was on YouTube. He did the whole thing about the what do you call it, the circumcision with the rabbis doing the little how they do it with the
yes
he got buried then too. So he says he lost. He said he lost it financially with all because when he did that one about Nick Cannon, I could not find him. If I had a bloodhound and I had a pair of his dirty gym socks, he was buried. You couldn't find anything. He was like. They really did a number on him. But anyhow, I wanted to just give you an update that Ryan from Last American Vagabond gave Adam a legitimate shout out. Like he's one of the very, if not only one, exposing certain things about
you know what it is. Adam doesn't get the recognition he deserves because there's a lot of fucking assholes in this space.
Right.
That can't put the movement first, and it's all about competition, and they sweat him because he's so talented, because he's breaking so many fucking belief systems and challenging people's belief systems that they want to ignore him. Right? They don't want to bring him up because they don't want their followers to tune in and then become followers of Adam. That's what happens a lot with these people that are myopic, and all they care about is their brand, which makes me fucking sick. I feel like throwing up when people refer to their brands. Right off.
Yeah, and as a Christian, I believe Adam Green is providing very, very relevant. For a Christian, because the Bible says, and you were there before about examine yourself to know if you are in the faith. So how are we going to examine ourselves and know if we're in the faith if we don't hear the other side? So as a Christian, I think he provides and he has legitimate things that I cannot ignore. And we've been down this road before, but I just said I want all of us on the space, whether you're a Muslim or a Jew or a Christian, or if you like, Adam, or even if you don't like him, keep him in your prayers, wish him well, that he gets better. I hope he's okay. Because he was saying on his on his Twitter, that he lost 30 pounds.
Yeah, he's been really sick for the last couple of months. And I'm like, dude, this isn't normal. You gotta you know, you got to figure it out. You got to change your diet. I've been trying to.
He might go
helpful
kosher.
suggestions, but yeah, now it's yeah, it's a fucking concern, man. It's a worry, you know.
It is, you know. I mean, because I know he was fine until he started like doing the oysters, and I don't know if he always ate like that, but you know, I think there is something to the kosher diet. You know, I mean, just me personally. I mean, not that I don't ever eat those things, but you know, I mean, if it's there, I like food, I'll eat it, but I don't really go out of my way to get like pork and swine and all those. So I don't know. Maybe Adam.
Let's hope.
Switch kosher.
Yeah. Let's hope it's food poisoning or some
That's
kind of
what I'm thinking.
dietary thing. It's not nothing
or
worse.
the one, or the one, or they got to him, or they you know, everyone put that
let's
past them.
not go.
Oh, yeah. Well,
let's not go.
Well, it's not like they wouldn't do it. That's all I'm saying.
No, it's not. And you know, let's
right.
not speculate.
Keep it positive. Let's keep it positive.
Let's not speculate. Let's give the man his
all right,
privacy.
I'm gonna lay some. Yep. I'm going to lay some Christianese on you. He's healed in the name of Jesus. I spoke it. It's out in the, you know,
let's hope.
Speak as if. Speak as if.
Let's hope.
Let's hope. All right, man.
All right,
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Brother B. Let's go to Queen of the Juice. Hello.
Hey. I just wanted to, for a second, because whenever you brought up 2020, whenever they had the George Floyd, I remember how the symbolism was so ironic during the whole thing. For a second. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You just knocked on the door?
Oh, no. I don't know what that noise was. But anyways, whenever he passed the fake 20, and that was supposedly what got the whole thing started. And then the cops showed up. I remember this was all 2020. This is whenever it was all that lockdown crap was going on. And then they had these people in the streets. This was the most ironic thing. Yelling, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe." I'm sorry. I just thought it was so funny because they had all these people under trauma-based mind control, all like scared at home. And then we had like all these other people in the streets chanting, "I can't breathe." And it was just all so theatrical in hindsight. I just think it was incredible what a time to be alive.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is what probably happened. They wanted something like this to happen, and in this day and age, right, everybody's filming everybody. As soon as especially cops, as soon as some shit pops off, you're gonna have a lot of people videotaping it. So between the videotaping, the climate in the country, and they wanted to aggravate this. They wanted this racial powder keg to ignite for whatever reasons. We know what those reasons are, right? It's to foment strife and discontent, and to accentuate our differences as a people, to polarize the society. That was what they were doing. It was a George Walker Bush moment. Mission accomplished, right? They got it done. They set this country against one another, and we've never been more polarized as a nation than we are right now. And it's only gotten worse.
Oh yeah, I've had people tell me, I mean, and these are people I've known my whole life, who I came out of their womb, say, "That's your reality." In my reality, I mean, apparently we're from two totally different realities, you know, at this point. And I don't think right, because I don't think along whatever lines of the reality of, you know, not only my family, but of my culture.
Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb, sister?
Yeah, on repeat.
The blood of the Jesus. Behold the Lamb of God that taketh away the sins of the world. Thank you for that, Queen of the Juice.
Wash and repeat. It's a rent cycle.
The blood bathing?
Yeah, all of it. It just seems like all of it. It seems just like an ongoing, ritual for a group. Gonna, like you said earlier, so and so's are the baddies, now they're the goodies. These guys are the good guys, now they're the bad guys. It's just like just swapping at places. Everyone's trying to be superior to the next, especially morally, and that's what.
Subscribe to any of that stuff. It's it's pretty simple. It's keep it simple, stupid. Do the right thing. Be a good person. Don't lie. Don't kill children. It's not too much to ask. I don't think I'm asking for much. Let's go to back here to my man Norman Finkelstein.
Look at what's happening now.
Look at what's happening.
Countries that supported the South African intervention at the ICJ. It did not include Saudi Arabia. It did not. There was Egypt eventually came on board. Jordan eventually came on board, but the Gulf states, with the exception of Qatar, now don't count me on that. Don't quote me on that because I'm not positive. They did not come on board, and Saudi Arabia was not there. As Christopher Gunnis, the former spokesperson for...
Now, how many people know that? How many people know that the Gulf Arabs fucking abandoned the Palestinians in the ICJ? And more importantly, I get all these chicken pecking Uncle Tom Gulf Arabs. No, you don't know anything. Blah, 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 blah. They get their feelings hurt on Twitter and say, I know nothing. How many of you fucking idiots out there knew that? And how do you feel about that? Leaving the Palestinians, leaving them hanging out to dry at the ICJ. You can't even get on board with that. And you have the fucking balls to come at me that I don't know anything about the chicken pecking crypto J Gulf Arab fucking Uncle Toms. Give me a fucking break. Actually, even better, send an invite. Come in, call in. Let's have a back and forth. Let's have an exchange. I got nothing to hide. Bjorkness, step to me. Where are all these people? Brandy Martinez, where are you? The Hispanic that's going to lead the white race to victory. Where are you? Fucking laughable, man. You're a caricature and a fucking worm. You can't hold Putin's jockstrap. Bundle of sticks, motherfucker.
It would be a fraction of a fraction of Saudi oil revenues to replace the United States and the European powers in financing UNRWA. The total figure comes to $440 million. That's how much MBS spends on prostitutes in a weekend.
Right. That is hilarious. That is hilarious. Where is this Muslim charity? Where is Bert? The Saudis are cryptos, and that's a slight against Islam. Where are these Gulf Arabs that they have gold-plated fucking toilet bowls? They can't pick up the slack because the United States and the Europeans followed their orders from Tel Aviv and defunded UNRWA. It's a joke. How any of these people, well, I shouldn't, castigate them for that because I'm in a similar situation as we are also controlled and occupied here in America, in these here Zionist states of America. But I got an excuse. I got a better excuse than the Gulf Arabs. AIPAC and organized world Jewry controls us thoroughly, full spectrally here. Perhaps they do in the Gulf as well. Perhaps they do in the Gulf as well. That would be a light bulb moment.
Well, prostitutes and liquor. On the weekend, you see them coming forward to replacing the U.S. and the Europeans. It's nothing. It's small change for them. $440 million. They're not doing it. They want to see those Gazans starve. Absolutely. They want that defeat. Because if Gaza is not defeated, the axis of resistance will take credit for it.
Guys, can you hear Norman? I mean, he speaks really low, and I got this at maximum volume. Can you hear him? Can you give me a thumbs up? I'm going to try to turn this up a little bit more. But I mean, I'm having a little issue here. Can you guys hear him? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear him. Pacific, are you in here? Anybody? Can you guys hear me? Thumbs up? All right.
I don't want that.
This is also very depressing in a way, isn't it?
It's a very depressing situation. I said we're entering a dark period. Then it's a zero-sum period.
That's the way they think.
I did notice that in the Hamas counter proposal, they didn't speak at all about ending the conflict. They talked about ending armed hostilities.
145 days free phase of ceasefire or something.
Yeah, a full Israeli withdrawal, a humanitarian end of the blockade, a humanitarian relief, reconstruction, and everything.
An exchange of hostages.
Yeah, exchange of hostages for Israeli Palestinians held in Israeli jails. They had a detailed plan, and it was a good document because it showed these people they have knowledge of the ground. They know exactly what needs to be done, and they know exactly the sequence it has to be done in. But what was noticeably absent, because you have to recall, there's all this talk about what we're going to do the day after, and we have to resuscitate the two-state settlement, and who's going to come in and govern, and when are the Palestinian authorities going to play a role? That was completely absent from the document. Mm-hmm. Totally absent. The only thing they were concerned about was the humanitarian side, the military side, the reconstruction side, but nothing about an end to the conflict. End to military activity. Military exchanges, but not to end the conflict.
Hi.
They just wanted to pause it. Very realistic, based in reality. I want to go to. We've got a couple of different ways to go. Oh, now that I see, hold on a second here. Let me see something real quick. The shenanigans never stop. I'm watching these numbers jump up and down. Maybe it's okay. No, it's all right. It's all right. My bad, Twatter. It wasn't your fault this time. It wasn't your Office of Protection and Community Guidelines and whatever the fuck you call it. Wasn't you this time? Let's listen to this dumb fuck.
Underwater, drown this fucking company, put people out of work and that shit. It's like, you got the message, and it's right. They're like, I'm so empowered by the internet. Find something better to do. You need to know there's so many more businesses, and this goes on and on. Yeah. And I don't care if they're left wing or right wing, it's just their fucking ideology. Yeah. Like, when they cross that line and signal to people like myself and many others that they were okay with this transgender thing, and more so at like, is this Anheuser-Busch? And like I told you, like, I don't give a fuck. Like, a lot of people work. You know what the worst part about it was? These people are like people losing their jobs. Our Kid Rock's, big ass honky talking Nashville. Fuck. And by the way, I'm not into fucking boycotts and cancel culture. Like sending someone a message, okay, that. Like, there's a fine line there, but ultimately, I'm not fucking into cancel culture. If you're in business and you,
where is this?
I don't think if there's what would be like, what's a target audience for gay people? A product.
Where is this? Hold on a second. I thought I was playing this. Okay, Bud Light, Bohemian Grove. Okay, here it is.
It's like they should just go in there and be like, you know what? We want our hostages back. If we don't have them back, clock starts now in fucking 24 hours. We're going to start bombing motherfuckers and killing fucking civilians. 30, 40,000 a fucking time. So you civilians better fucking pack up and fucking get these fucking motherfuckers and you go against Hamas. You fucking go against them. We're not playing fucking games with you. That's the only thing people understand. This is what happened in Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
What's going on, folks? So Kid Shit for Brains Rock thinks that the solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict is killing even more civilians, and he's not even trying to hide it or pretend that they're not civilians like some other people are doing. He's just straight up saying, go kill the civilians, in some of the stupidest, most drugged-out boomer logic I've ever heard in my life.
And killing fucking civilians. 30, 40,000 a fucking time. So you civilians better fucking pack up and fucking get these fucking motherfuckers and you go against Hamas. You fucking go against them. We're not playing fucking games with you. That's the only thing people understand. This is what happened in Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
That's what happened in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Good analogy there. Doesn't really make much sense at all. But what do you expect? The guy's a fucking hayseed, And what does Rogan say? I mean, I don't know what else. What do you say to this fucking guy? But it's a big deal because he's on Rogan, and Rogan has the biggest podcast on the planet. That's the only reason why anyone's talking about this. No one cares about Kid Rock's fucking opinion on Palestine and how to get the hostages back. It's all he's worried about. He doesn't give a shit about the fact that the Gazans are imprisoned in an illegal occupation under siege for the last 17 years, have no human dignity or human rights or self-determination. He couldn't give a fuck about that, right? Doesn't just fucking ignorance, arrogance, the ugly American, the poster boy for the ugly American, why the whole world hates us. Keep talking, Kid Rock. Keep talking. Not that I disagree with him on a lot of other, transgenders and everything else. Okay. But, this, obviously he's a fountain of disinformation, of misinformation.
In occupied Gaza and the West Bank, and what the legal obligations are for Israel as an occupying state. It has been a morning of speeches and presentations, 2 weeks, over 8 days, of over 50 countries and 3 human rights organizations.
Let me play this first. Let me play the Turkish ambassador. Where are you? Unbelievable. I gotta find this. Hold on, guys. I thought I had it tabbed. But, it's interesting, right? Because you had 50 some odd countries talking about this. 50 some odd countries. Here it is.
The delegation of Turkey for its presentation. I invite the next one.
All right, this is about... Okay.
Established, located in East Jerusalem, Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, or Haram al-Sharif.
This is very important, guys, because it affects 2.3 billion Muslims worldwide. So this is very important.
Is among the holiest sites for Muslims around the world. Therefore, its sanctity as a Muslim shrine must be upheld as sacrosanct at all times. The historical status quo at the holy places in Jerusalem, including in Haram al-Sharif, was established during the Ottoman era and has remained in place ever since. On 4th of April 2023, Israeli security forces stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque, beat up worshippers, and detained hundreds of them altogether during the holy month of Ramadan. This kind of brutal practice is becoming commonplace. While Muslim worshippers face the treatment above, Israeli security forces continue storming the Haram al-Sharif to provide shelter for the Jews who enter the compound in breach of the historical status quo. In addition to the holy places, the status of Jerusalem itself is also a main issue. As a result of well-known developments, the State of Israel was proclaimed on 14 May 1948. And the ensuing conflict resulted in Israel controlling more land than envisaged under the UN General Assembly Resolution 181 of 29 November 1947. An armistice line, known also as Green Line, came into being. On 5th of June 1967, Israel launched a military offensive and occupied the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem illegally. In the following period, several UN Security Council and General Assembly resolutions affirmed that acquisition of territory by military conquest is inadmissible under the international law, and confirmed that all legislative and administrative measures and actions taken by Israel which purport to alter the status of Jerusalem, including expropriation of lands and properties thereon, are invalid and cannot change the status. Furthermore, the UN Security Council condemned in the strongest terms all measures taken to change the status of the city of Jerusalem. United Nations General Assembly, in its resolution of 4th of July 1967, also considered measures taken by Israel to change the status of the city of Jerusalem totally invalid. It called upon Israel to rescind all measures already taken and to desist forthwith from taking any action which would alter the status of Jerusalem. UN General Assembly Resolution of 14th July 1967 also reiterated this call. On 30th of July 1980, Israeli Parliament adopted Basic Law titled Jerusalem, the Capital of Israel, proclaiming the complete and united Jerusalem is the capital of the State of Israel, which asserted a clear change into the character and status of the city of Jerusalem. In response to this illegal act, the UN Security Council resolution, I repeat, UN Security Council, not General Assembly, the UN Security Council resolution 478 in 1980 affirmed that, I quote, the enactment of the Basic Law by Israel constitutes a violation of international law and determines that all legislative and administrative measures and actions taken by Israel as the occupying power, which have altered or purport to alter the character and status of the holy city of Jerusalem. And
okay, I'm not going to play the whole thing because, you know, it's not the most exciting kind of dialogue. It's all legal, but he goes step by step describing all the illegal acts that contravene all international law and Security Council resolutions. He chronicles it historically, and it's a litany, and it's compelling. But you get the gist. So now let's go to the summary from the news here.
Their cases to the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Today we heard from the Ambassador of Turkey, the Solicitor General of Zambia, and later on we will hear from the Organisation of Islamic Cooperation, and Uthman Bashara, to discuss this further. He was sitting in and listening to what was being said by Dr. Wild. We were listening intently, but our ears pricked up on one particular statement, which was when Dr. Wild talked about how certain countries want us to think the law is in a particular party's favour. He said the law as you like it should not be determined by the law as it is. A very direct and comprehensive, you might say. Sit up and take note. Don't be taken in by what's being said. The law's written down here, and you've got to, all 15 judges have got to take note of it.
I thought he took aim at the United States and the United Kingdom, rather cleverly, I should say, basically telling them that there is the international law, and there is your attempt at expropriating international law for your own ends. You can do that, but don't call it international law. That wouldn't be international law. And trying to treat Israel as sui generis, as a unique issue in terms of its occupation of Palestine is not acceptable. But I thought in general that this was the best argumented, most comprehensive argument thus far that we've heard.
He unpicked it very cleverly, didn't he?
I think he did. And I think there are two reasons why I'm saying that. One is because he put the occupation of the Palestinian territories after 1967 in its historic context. This is the best possible argument against the United States and the United Kingdom that say, let's leave it to the parties to resolve the dispute. And this could be by nature temporary, even if it's more than 5 decades. What Dr. Wilde has said is that there's a pattern, there's a process, and there is context. And the context is that Israel has been doing this not since 1967, it's been doing this since 1947. And that the same thing, basically, that it did in the Galilee, in the Triangle, and the Negev area within Israel against the Palestinians after 1948, it's doing now to the Palestinians in the occupied territories.
Right. It's just continuing a pattern of aggression, displacement, and theft. Call it what it is. Don't be scared to call it by use the correct terminology. It's theft. It's genocide. It's ethnic cleansing. That's it. They try to put lipstick on a pig and it don't work. That dog don't hunt, partner. Now back up off your sister. She ain't your girlfriend. Get your tongue out of her mouth. That's to my friends out there that want to say, "Oh, we serve at the leisure of our Zionist masters in the Bible Belt," that are willing to sacrifice their sons and their daughters and their grandchildren for the sake of Zion because they're brainwashed. You're brainwashed, and you're a traitor to America. How do you like them apples? Lindsey Graham, how do you like them apples? Meghan McCain, Victoria Nuland, Anthony Blinken, Jake Sullivan. Just a list of fucking grotesque people. The worst of the worst. I got a definition for you guys all to look up, a word for you to look up. Kakistocracy. Look up kakistocracy, chat. That's what we're dealing with.
Occupied after 1967. Hence, there's a pattern. Hence, what Israel is doing in the occupied territories is not random and it's not incidental. It is by design.
Yep.
And it is meant as an annexation. Hence, the building of the settlements and the proliferation and expansion of those settlements. The second point that I thought has been very, very clear. And let's remind ourselves, this is a lawyer that speaks for the Arab League. I mean, the Arab League as an organization in reality has been kind of useless. But here, in terms of representing a consensus against a settler colonial entity in an Arab region, I think it's key. And hence the 2 points that he made that I thought summarized the entire thing was saying, one, that the Israel illegal use of force in the occupied territories that is meant to protect its settlement enterprise and annexation is a form of aggression. It is unlawful. Second, by doing that, it is denying the Palestinians the right for self-determination on whatever pretext, including the pretext of self-defense, that he took a while in explaining why this is not acceptable according to international law.
One of the issues that we've spoken to many contributors who've been on Al Jazeera over the past 4 months we're media folk. We speak to analysts, we speak to politicians. How important are proceedings like this for the public who are watching Al Jazeera now and have been watching this court presentation, that they listen to the facts and the historical context for themselves and make their own decisions? Because we're seeing these global protests from people around the world who have got one opinion or the other. But when you hear the facts and they're put in context and what is legal and what is illegal, all right, Mr. Wilde is speaking on behalf of the League of Arab States, but Israel has its supporters in that court too, and they will speak as well. How important is it to listen to what these people are saying?
It's tremendously important. And not just to the Arab League legal advisor here, but also to what the United States said and the UK, because this is a very important issue that's been with us for a century now, and that has become an inflaming point for an entire region and a threat to world peace and security. Now, of course, in the world of global media, as you know very well, Suhail, since you are a seasoned journalist, we are more attached to infotainment nowadays than we are to something that almost resembles a lecture at a university, in this case, the University of London. So this might be difficult to follow for people who are not experts in the issue. But I would suggest the following, at least, that this needs to be saved, archived, and taught at the universities. That this should be used by every documentarian, by every journalist, as a background, important, factual, legal argument about this issue that we call Israeli occupation of Palestine. It is so well argued, it is so factual, and it speaks to the spirit of the law. Now, why is this important, speaking to the letter and the spirit of the law? Because in conflict, like the Arab-Israeli conflict, in situations of aggression, apartheid, and colonialism, you have one of two solutions. Either resistance, as the Chinese argued, could be resistance by force or popular resistance. And that could take years, decades, and months. In the case of Algeria and South Africa, that we also heard from in the first day, this took millions of casualties. In the case of Algeria, we speak about almost 1 million deaths in liberating Algeria from the French settler colonials. The other way is the international community defending international law. That's the other possibility for how we can end situations as in Israel's occupation and apartheid in Palestine. So either it has to be local, regional resistance that could lead to bloodshed, major bloodshed, as we see in Gaza today. Or it could be the international community coming together, not led by hypocrites and double standards, but by responsible grown-ups who can see that after 75 years of dispossession, aggression, and occupation, that the two parties don't have a dispute, that, as we've heard from Dr. Wilde, that there is one party that has been aggressing another party for 75 years through the use of force and oppression.
This actual proceeding was already, you might say, on the timetable. Had October the 7th not happened, Marwan, would this have got the publicity? Would it have got over 50 countries and 3 human rights organizations involved in proceedings? Because, dare I say it, unfortunately, it's coincidental that this particular case was already going to be heard anyway, regardless of what happened on October the 7th.
You know, one of the reasons, one of the sad...
You know, the Israelis are lying. They lie about everything. We understand this. They lie about literally everything, right? God gave them the land. They're just returning home. The deed to Palestine, the rationale, the end gathering, their prophecies, their fake desert God, everything, right? The circumstances, the context, the historical narrative. It's all fucking make-believe. It's all a joke. It's like a script that they wrote. They're very good storytellers. Very talented storytellers. So we've been sold a bill of goods. Now, they're facing a real challenge here. For the first time in a very long time, a real challenge that's going to jeopardize their monopoly and their annexation ambitions for Eretz Israel, from the river to the sea. right? There's a real resistance, a real armed resistance. And the fact that they're trying to say they've only lost 235 soldiers in the fighting since October 31st is absolute bullshit. Absolute bullshit. They said they've made about 1,000 helicopter evacuations. The Al-Aqsa, the Qassam brigades, the Islamic Jihad, they give their reports. They've destroyed hundreds of tanks and infantry fighting vehicles and bulldozers. And I'm not just talking low hundreds, high hundreds. So who's telling the truth? Well, we know we can't trust or believe a word they say. That's the problem. It's all going to come out. They're not going to be able to hide these numbers. The families are going to have to be notified. They can't just not bury the story and then not ever have to face the music. They're going to have to face the music. It's confusing, right? That they think they just bullshit their way into manifesting this fucking false reality. They are taking losses. They're hemorrhaging, personnel. They don't have enough of a big enough fighting force. These are big problems, and they're only going to get worse as they get further attrited. It's not looking good for the Zionist state, boys and girls. It's not looking good at all.
Fortunate reasons for the justification for the October 7 attack was those Palestinians in Gaza, the likes of Hamas, were saying, we have been forgotten, we have been marginalized, we have been neglected, under occupation, under siege, under oppression for decades now. And not only that the world has forgotten us, the Arabs have forgotten us. Not only the Arabs have forgotten us, the Arabs
have abandoned.
A number of their regimes have stabbed us in the back.
Right.
By normalizing relations with Israel at our expense.
Right.
So you can imagine that Gaza has revolutionized, basically have, it's like
and the fact that these chicken-pecking Uncle Tom fucking slave Arabs have abandoned Palestine, they're actively rooting against them because they don't want to give the Shia axis of resistance the W. That's how disgusting and despicable they are. And they won't be forgotten. And you know what? You chicken pecking Uncle Tom Arabs, you're going to have to deal with it. Your populations are not going to be very happy with you. None of these motherfuckers should feel safe. Not a single one of these leaders that have sold out the Palestinian people should feel safe. Not a one.
Yeah, it's like a little hand grenade thrown in international law and international community, saying, pay attention here. You cannot continue to ignore this issue. And who was the first leader who responded to this, what I would call a gruesome attack against Israel on October 7, but also the subsequent...
Oh, just in case, I want to make this disclaimer.
It was President Biden.
We're not advocating any kind of violence. I'm talking about they shouldn't feel safe in their political position. They should feel very worried that they're going to lose their power. They're going to lose their position, potentially lose their liberty for collaborating with the enemy. That's what I mean. Before you do a canary mission, edit and fucking cut and fucking edit. We want a cessation to all violence. We're anti-war. We're pro-peace. Do you get it? But at the same time, I'm not a pacifist. People have a right to be free. It's not that complicated. It really isn't. It's about truth, justice, and freedom. Simple as can be.
He's complicit throughout his political career, meaning 50 years. With Zionism and with Israeli aggression and occupation, complicit.
And this is where these Sunni Muslims have to step up. You guys like to come in here and say, oh, no, we want to do blah, 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 blah. The Sunni Arabs have to step up, right? The ones whose governments have sold out the Palestinian people. We know it's not the people, lady. We know it's not the people, lady. But their governments. How are you going to put pressure on those governments? How are you going to get them to change sides? That's your job. That's what you need to do. As Sunni Muslims, as Sunni Muslim Arabs. That's your job, not mine. I got my hands full trying to fucking liberate America from Zionist Jewish supremacy. You got to take your fucking job more seriously over there. That's what I'm talking about. Oh, but Brent, it's the people, the Muslims, it's not Sunni, it's Shia. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it isn't. It isn't. Then who are the only people fighting these people in support of the Palestinians, if not the Shia? This is your problem.
October 7, he said, 3 weeks later, October 27, he said, basically telling the Israelis, we cannot go back to the status quo ante. We cannot go back to the pre-war status quo. We must now readdress and we must try to resolve this issue. We can't ignore it anymore. So if the American president start paying attention, right? If America, the UK, and everyone start paying attention, and they're coming to testify here, it goes a long way to show you that suddenly, unfortunately, after the death of tens of thousands of Palestinians over the past 4 or 5 months, that the world's starting to pay attention. But I tell you, Sohail, and I tell our viewers around the world, pay attention. Because in these dark times, the conspirators are not letting go. And those who wish the Palestinians ill and do not seek justice in the Middle East are arguing against the international law making itself evident in the question of Israel-Palestine.
And it does becoming more and more evident, certainly in those public demonstrations that we're seeing globally as well. People are not believing, but they're just losing trust in their lawmakers, the people that they vote for. And we're seeing that. It'd be interesting to see, with so many major elections coming up in 2024, it'd be interesting to see how much this plays into that dialogue. What I did want to go back, and something you touched on, was the countries that have presented their cases here at the ICJ. Over the 2 weeks, we saw South Africa, Algeria, Saudi Arabia. Just want to bring those in along with Ireland. We talked about South Africa's apartheid. We know about Algeria's colonialist past by the French. I wanted to bring in the role of Saudi Arabia because, as you just said, there's been a political hand grenade bomb thrown into the Middle East saying, wake up, Arab countries, you haven't supported us, you stabbed us in the back. Saudi Arabia's presentation was incredibly strong, and it sort of made me think about the conversations before October the 7th. Was Saudi Arabia going to recognize Israel? What was Saudi Arabia's position? Various Arab countries were and for or against what Saudi Arabia would do. Saudi Arabia takes a step, all the other Arab Muslim countries follow. How do you position Saudi Arabia in all of this now? Because they've remained a little bit quiet, but very vocal here.
Well, there is, in terms of analysis, there is the optimistic analysis and there is the pessimistic analysis. Let's start with the pessimistic analysis. The pessimistic analysis, the bad news is that a good number of Arab regimes and Western regimes are hoping for this war to end with the defeat of Hamas, the containment of Gaza, pacification of Gaza, total destruction of Gaza, in order to go back to the Abraham Accords and normalizations of relations between a good number of new Arab countries with Israel. That's what they're hoping. And all of them are praying that Israel finishes the job already. That's why Americans and Brits and others are frustrated with the Israeli government, not because it's killing people in Gaza. It's not because it's not finishing the job in a bit more civil way, right? Maybe perhaps 5,000, 10,000, 15, 20,000 dead, but not 30+ thousand, not 100,000 casualties, right? So clearly the Americans and others would wish this to end.
They wish it to end. Their only problem is They want to get this thing wrapped up so they can meet their buddies and go back to their pre-war status and, shoot the back nine every Wednesday afternoon. They want to get back to their old schedules, right? They don't want to miss another lodge meeting at the Masonic Lodge. It's getting in the way of their fucking routine. It's inconveniencing their schedules. They don't have a problem with the killing. Just get it done with already. Finish it off. Right? It's a fucking sick world, my friends. And tell me again about how good has vanquished evil. When evil's got the wheel, man, they're in the driver's seat and have been. And it's nothing new. It's nothing new. Your great-great-great-grandfather was born, lived, and died in this fucking beast system, this kosher matrix, completely oblivious to its very existence. That's the difference between us and them. We know. We have the knowledge, the realization of our reality. That's the difference here.
All right, this is your Gaza War Sitrep Day 142. And once again, no end in sight. And I should say no end in sight in particular because there is some more ceasefire misinformation being spread by Israel. They're saying we submitted a proposal and it's very good and we're close to a deal. I saw that on the internet today, and I don't think it's true. And in fact, Hamas has said they're spinning a web of delusion, or spinning a web that's got nothing to do with reality. The ceasefire talk they're saying has nothing to do with anything we have seen.
And it takes days for those messages to get to where they need to be. So the fact that they proposed it yesterday and the media picks it up and covers it is a separate thing from communicating with the resistance.
Just a distraction from so many things.
Genocide
to distract from. John, you are the authority on videos. So I'm sure, I don't know if you're going to break this video down, but there's a video that I saw of Al-Quds Brigade, and they are doing sniper attacks on 6 soldiers, and you sort of watch these soldiers falling. And it looks, I don't know, the video shows one sniper firing 6 times, and usually when they get hit, they run. So it's quite a stunning video to see in a lot of ways. I don't know if you have any comment on that video.
Mujahideen brigades, not Aleksander's brigades. Dragunov sniper attack. It's tough to confirm. It sure looks like they're dropping them. I guess they would drop down if there was gunshots. The Dragunov is you can fire multiple rounds from it, although you ought not to if you're sniping, but they do. So it looked like I mean, the thing about the Qassam videos is that you actually can verify almost all of them. And so when I do it on the show on Electronic Intifada, I don't just show any video. I make sure that it's not like wise editing or what's the word? Creative editing.
Now, speaking of getting creative, I've noticed on John Elmer's Twitter feed, this one, Qassam versus IDF in Khan Yunis, including strikes on 2 M113 variants. This is not a Namur APC. This is not an armored personnel carrier. And we've been asking this question for months. When is Israel going to run out of armored vehicles?
February 25th.
And I think this is a sign. Why are they using a 1960s model armored personnel carrier? Why would they do that? And
why indeed?
So quietly to do that, right? Like they didn't. I didn't see anything on the Israeli side talking about this. This is because there's a resistance video of them hitting this
Absolutely. And the Israelis all publicly know about this, because in 2014, when my allusion in that tweet is to the beginning of the ground invasion in the 2014 war, when Israel moved into Shujaiya on the east of Gaza City, and immediately were hit in an ambush. And it was in one of those M113s, and that's when Qassam captured a soldier. And at the time, we had believed that they had captured multiple soldiers, and it was a huge story in Israel. And it was a story that kind of shaped Israeli military planning. They needed to rush into service their better armored personnel carriers, their NAMR personnel carriers, because people in Israel were mad that their conscription army got sent into battle in insufficient gear. And so to see that today, those, when I said 10 times thicker, it's actually way more than that. It's 20 times. The capacity of a Yasin is 20 times thicker, can go through 20 times the thickness of that armored vehicle. So you've got Israelis being sent into Khan Yunis. I don't know if it's just arrogance that they believe. I don't know what that is, but I wouldn't go in that vehicle. If my commander told me to go to Khan Yunis in that vehicle, the news story would be about a confrontation within my unit, because there's no way I'm going in there.
You don't get arrogant in month 5. That's not how arrogance works.
No, I think you run out of armored vehicles.
That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like.
I don't know how you could spin that any other way. There's no military need to send those, and those guys are not. If those vehicles were full of troops, those soldiers are no longer with us. So that's the kind of event, though, right? In Israel, it's sometimes it's these events. In Lebanon, it was when one of their helicopters was shuttling troops, and it crashed. And it's a huge story in Israel with a conscription army, because essentially a plane crash is your fault. And so it targets, it hits the community in a different way than combat deaths. So it's very surprising footage to see today. And I'll break it down on Wednesday on Electronic Intifada. You guys should tune in. Noon on Wednesday.
Okay, we have on the Yemen front our absolute favorite public speaker, Yahya Sari. You guys, I know I've said this before, but this guy is amazing. I don't want to play it and have you listen, but this guy's delivery, I mean, there's nothing like it. He's earnest, and he's amazing. So the Yemeni armed forces targeted the American Thor ship in the Gulf of Aden with a number of anti-ship missiles. They didn't say the result, but they certainly announced that they made that attack.
And he speaks every time they launch an attack, which is a nice touch.
There's another. I don't mean to give too much of a preview of Soldiers in a Window, but do you want to say anything about the latest Soldiers in a Window video?
They just continue to do it. It's an entire theme.
Soldiers in a Window.
Those 3 soldiers aren't here anymore either. So
that's Kanye. They got hit by a rocket or a TBG, right?
Yeah, thermobaric. So that's a fuel air weapon that you would want to not survive. Surviving would be worse than. And then we saw those 2 troop carriers, which could have had 15 to 20 people in them combined.
Really, really big day of casualties.
Yeah, if you include the Mujahideen brigades, if that video is true, that they were dropping those guys with sniper fire, we're going to really see if people want to track it about how Israel lies about its casualties, because there's just no other way to spin those. I don't know. I don't know how you could spin. The only thing you could say is that they're empty. The 2 troop carriers were empty by the guys.
In which case, you're just driving them around Khan Yunis, taking a tour. They did trickle out a couple. I saw, some younger guys, 20, 21-year-old sergeants, major, a 24-year-old major.
The reserves are gone, so the soldiers should be,
Okay, so yeah, lots of operations in Gaza. This is the summary. There's lots of operations in Khan Yunis and in Gaza City, Zaytun neighborhood in Khan Yunis, and really, really big casualty events. And like with these mortar operations, we mentioned it a couple days ago, but they're the end of that video, one of those videos that we just looked at, like there's like plumes of fire. You know, they're monitoring.
Oh, that was a barrel bomb. That on the one video, the Qassam video today, they remotely detonated a barrel bomb that looked like, and that's the next stage of the guerrilla war, is spectacular attacks, right? That take time to place, that need the Israelis to be in position for days. They need to be coordinated, but then they set up these massive attacks, and that's the way that they drove the Israelis out of Gaza in the Intifada, was tunnel bombs buried underneath their troop positions that can take time, but then you can basically stuff them with as much explosives as you can fit, and that's what a barrel bomb is. They use that term to describe essentially just filling something up with as much explosives as you can, and setting it off. So these are a different kind of qualitative attack that will happen if the Israelis plan on sitting in the buffer zone, or sitting in Zaytun, which is cutting the Gaza Strip in half. These kind of operations will lead to these massive operations and spectacular operations. And these are the types of operations that the Israeli public, which is all weekend were protesting, and they had water cannons in the street of Tel Aviv. Horses attacking protesters. So this is something to watch, because we remember that Israel was involved in effectively like a de facto democratic civil war, where half the population supported a judicial overhaul that would take the power away from an independent judiciary, and basically half that don't, that want that, right? So there's half that want it, half that don't, and they decided to kind of put their differences aside when October 7th happened. But those aside, is like the families of the captives are leading these demonstrations, the ones in Tel Aviv. And then, did you see the bouncy castle outside of Erez?
Yeah.
Like they turned their rave into a bouncy castle. They're just so demented.
You guys, the demonstration, they're beating people from horseback. It's like, yeah, it's not like the demonstrations at the border where they're policed with kid gloves. These are
let in. They're the ones at the border. They're let in there by the army. No, they made that demonstration illegal. Those horses came up on a loudspeaker and said this demonstration's illegal, and basically started attacking people. So yeah, lots to watch.
Ehud Olmert, he says we need a ceasefire. He says Israel needs a ceasefire now, and we can't do anything to Iran. And
ex-con,
kind of defeatist, sounding a little defeatist.
Yeah, Ehud Olmert is he's going to make another appearance later in the show when we do the PA. But Ehud Olmert went to jail after he left office.
Is he a rapist?
His mouth, isn't he? He's always saying things they don't like to hear.
Well, he was the one who Sharon got to float the trial balloon about the disengagement from Gaza to see how people would react to it. And he gave the speech, maximum Jews, minimum Arabs. And the basics of that speech was that we have too many. If we have one person, one vote, like a democratic state, it won't be a Jewish state. And if we don't give Palestinians the vote, then it's apartheid. So we basically have to act, and that's what they did after the Intifada, the second Intifada. They walled off Palestine, created a ghetto, which I think this is going to effectively be part 2 of that show. So if people are listening to this and didn't see part 1 on Friday, you should go back and listen to that, because we're going to build on that. Because the siege was implemented, but it needs the PA, it needs the Palestinian Authority to function.
Okay, and the last thing, though, John, that I wanted to cover was that there has been a massive Israeli intelligence revelation. They actually discovered a letter from Yahya Sinwar that says, "I'm very, very angry at Hassan Nasrallah." So this is one of the major Israeli successes. They found this handwritten letter. And so, you know, kudos to them.
The tide is turning. They also found Hania's expired Visa debit card.
Oh, okay. Were there trillions of dollars of...
Well, he's in Doha, so I don't think he needed it, but they found it and they bragged about that. That was early in the communist operation.
Okay, so they are getting a lot of intelligence.
Well, in the New York Times yesterday, they had a story about Israeli military intelligence talking about how they had basically won the war in the south, except for Rafah, how they cleared Khan Yunis. Israeli military intelligence is all over this story, saying there's no more fighting in Khan Yunis. And then, like, the newspaper's not even wrapping fish yet, and there's already a series of videos from Khan Yunis that indicate something like 24 plus casualties. So,
yeah.
Okay, so I got this one more story. Do you want me to do this?
Yeah.
This story is from Al Mayadeen. Informed sources told Al Mayadeen that the Palestinian Authority government will submit its resignation to PA President Mahmoud Abbas tomorrow. The sources added that the current government will carry out its work as a caretaker government. The official source stated that the move was a preemptive one by Abbas in response to international and regional pressures on the PA as a step to stop the war on the Gaza Strip, provide international guarantees for the withdrawal of the IDF, stop the invasions of the West Bank, and lift the financial siege on the PA. The source added, after achieving a cessation of the war, the step will be followed by forming a national consensus among all Palestinian factions, including the Hamas movement. This move comes ahead of the Moscow meeting of all Palestinian factions scheduled for Thursday, February 29th. So that's why we sit rep. We sit rep to prepare you for these kind of messages. Because we talked about Moscow last show, and then here we go. It's handed right to us. Right on the day that we're going to do the PA, we get this story from. So we'll see. We'll see what... I mean, PA is famous for resigning.
Bullshit.
Saeb Erekat, famously the head of the peace process delegations, famously 8 times resigned.
Yeah, it's one of the most symbolic gestures and one of the most potentially meaningless gestures. But I mean, it's a news item, and it's a news item about our historical subject of today.
That's a segue right there.
That's a segue if there ever was one. So we have to talk about. So we've done sit reps talking about why Egypt has been so anti-Palestinian. We've done a sit rep on Syria and the price that Syria has paid for not kind of dropping the Palestine issue. We just did a sit rep on the siege of Gaza. So I'm kind of trying to set up a series of pieces so that people can understand the fact that it's a system of alliances that Israel has that underpins its ability to attack the Palestinians with impunity. It's because it has alliances with Jordan, Israel, and with the Palestinian Authority that enables them to progressively isolate Palestinian resistance and try to destroy them. And that's why today we wanted to talk specifically about the Palestinian Authority, which is the organization that governs the West Bank, no longer governs Gaza, and why, despite continuous attacks, assassinations, invasions, incursions into the Al-Aqsa Mosque, why the Palestinian Authority continues to support Israel. And that's like the mysterious question that we're going to answer today. And it's a mystery probably none of you knew, or not a lot of you probably knew was needed to be. It's a question nobody knew they needed answered, but you do need an answer for this question. So the Palestinian Authority came from the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO. The PLO was founded in 1964 with the Palestinian National Covenant And it is about establishing a Palestinian state. I don't know. I don't think it says anything about where exactly, but the idea was that Israel is a colonial thief of Palestinian land, and the Palestinian Liberation Organization exists to liberate Palestine. This was the time. This is 1960. It's the 1960s. It's anti-colonialism. It's pan-Arab ideology. Nasser is the leader of Egypt. There's alliances of Arab countries that are trying to reverse the colonial takeover of Palestine. And the 1967 war is a big defeat. I talked about that in the SITREP where we talked about Egypt. And the Palestinian Liberation Organization has to kind of reorganize. And there's a struggle in the movement, among the Arab nationalist movement about like where the Palestinian Liberation Organization fits, because they're are they subordinate to Egypt? Are they subordinate to Nasser? Are they an equal partner since they're the most affected? And so there's a lot of internal, intra-Arab issues. And the Palestinian guerrilla movements, when they're attacking from Israel from Jordan, just shortly after 1967, 1970, there's basically a kind of a civil war in Jordan, where the king of Jordan successfully crushes the Palestinian movement and forces them to leave. They become headquartered from the 70s in Lebanon. Lebanon, I talked about in the context of Syria. There's a civil war in Lebanon starting in the 70s, and the Palestinian Liberation Organization factions are part of that. They're a party to that. And 1982, they're forced to leave again as part of this negotiation. And this was all covered in the SITREP on Syria. By the time the first Intifada happens, that's around 1987, and that's like a big national movement inside all of the occupied territories, the West Bank, Jerusalem, Gaza. And they are trying to overthrow the occupation of their lands, the territories occupied in 1967 through people power, like strikes and demonstrations and all of those. And Israel responds the way you would expect, through incredible violence and brutality, but they're forced to start a negotiation process because the resistance does not let up. And they start a negotiation process that leads, there's a whole bunch of meetings and a whole bunch of things, and they negotiate with the faction that's left, that's not in the West Bank and Gaza, the Arafat led faction of the PLO that are based in Tunis at this time. And so what the Palestinian Authority negotiates, what the Arafat party negotiates, is basically they get to go back to the West Bank. They get some kind of capital in Ramallah. They get subcontracted authority, municipal authority to control their population, and all other issues like the right of return, actual statehood, international representation, economic issues, control of water, freedom of movement. All of these issues are going to be settled later. And so they agree to that, and that becomes the Oslo Accords of 1993. And
but later is only 5 years later. The state was supposed to exist under the Oslo Plan by the mid-90s. And so the key difference is, like what you said, is that before the first Intifada in 1987, the Palestinian armed struggle and the major organizing body of the Palestinians is in exile. And so the Intifada is the bridge between the people, the leadership in exile, the PLO, and the indigenous resistance that's trying to throw off the occupation. And the Islamist currents are a more recent phenomena and are not in the PLO, despite the PLO having roughly representation across the political spectrum. Because of the timing of the Islamist movements end up being at the vanguard of the people were at the vanguard, but then the Islamist movements realized that they had to respond to the people. And that's when Hamas is formed out of the Brotherhood as a resistance organization, which had previously postponed the armed struggle point of their movement, because Hamas and the Hamas movement, before it was Hamas, is building an infrastructure, a Dawa infrastructure in the Palestinian territories that looks after people. That's a social program, and they're waiting for when to decide to become an armed struggle group, which is why Islamic Jihad exists separate from Hamas, because Fatih Shakaki, who led Islamic Jihad in the 80s, said it's time for action. And the people who would become Hamas, like Sheikh Yassin, said, no, the time's not right now to start the Islamist wing. So Islamic Jihad splinters off from the Islamist movements and becomes, from that point on, a very focused, action-based group. So when people ask what the difference between Islamic Jihad and Hamas is, it's a question that roots back to the beginning about whether there should be action now or whether you continue to build your foundations out. And because of that split, the PLO in exile, the resistance indigenously, and then the Islamists catching up locally, creates this dynamic where Oslo kind of sneaks in inside of this sort of split and creates the fundamental split. And the reason why the PLO accepted the PA was because all of these fighters got to come home. Part of the PA, the first steps of the PA was giving control of Gaza, municipal control of Gaza, to the Palestinians, Gaza and Jericho. And so these fighters come home, and they come home with their weapons. So that's the three currents happening: an indigenous resistance. The Islamist is an indigenous resistance as well, but it doesn't begin the Intifada. When the Intifada breaks out, they realize that now's the time that they have to act, and that's one of the reasons why the infamous Hamas charter. It comes out of that time where basically a few guys in the Gaza Strip wrote a communique to explain who they were. It's not that different than the Houthis explaining where they came up with their chant from, right? Like, it came out of a moment. They weren't thinking about whether this should be a lifetime. The Hamas charter wasn't intended to be a lifetime charter. It was kind of a spur of the moment thing, because the Intifada broke out, and the Islamist movements. I mean, the Islamist movements in some ways started the Intifada. Islamic Jihad, in a lot of ways, started the Intifada with their indigenous resistance in Gaza. They broke out of prison in Gaza and went. They broke out of Israeli prison in 1987, and then went, the 6 fighters, and went and hid out in Gaza and attacked Israeli forces. And there was a big battle in Shujaiya just before the December Intifada begins. A big battle, one of the first big battles, armed struggle battles, happens with Islamic Jihad fighters who broke out of prison. And it creates this flame that ultimately becomes a nonviolent demonstrations, but in a lot of ways the armed struggle led to that. So that's the context at this point. So now we're in the early 90s, and Israel starts peace negotiations publicly at a conference in Madrid with legitimate Palestinian representatives sent to Madrid. And they go and it's the first peace talks between Palestinians and Israelis. And the Israelis realize, like, there's no way we can do these public negotiations, because these leaders are legitimate in the eyes of their people, and they actually want real concessions to their, at that point, 50 years of displacement. And so Israel calls off the public negotiations that are in the newspapers and have a delegation like Haider Abdel Shafi, who's like a very well-respected Palestinian man who created the Palestinian Red Crescent. He's the person negotiating, somebody who's, universally respected within the society. And so Israel calls that off. They say, there's no way we're doing this. And they shift it to back rooms. They shift it to Mahmoud Abbas. They shift it away from an actual peace agreement to becoming this kind of staged thing where one stage, then the next stage, and if this happens, then that happens, and really muddy the waters so that the Palestinians, are left in a position where when Oslo is announced, this peace plan is announced, it's a secret, and the Palestinians are enraged by it.
Yeah, and why are they enraged? What is the Palestinian movements think of Oslo as a disaster, and it is
all
because
people do.
Yeah,
any living room, any room that you sat in Palestine, they would think that. And Arafat had to say it had to be Arafat because he was someone respected, and he had to constantly tell people, no, there's good parts to this. Don't worry, we're gonna, this at first, and then so they were able to sort of celebrate some of the things, like they were able to celebrate somewhat like municipal autonomy. And Arafat comes from exile and goes back and lives in Gaza. So there are things that look like success. One of the other things that we'll talk about later more is that they bring their security forces. And Israel tells them that these security forces are to protect, effectively to protect Israel. But at the time, the fighters that were coming home were not collaborators. They were not collaborators. They were fighters who lived in Jordan, lived in Lebanon, lived in Tunis, and fought. And so they were able to come home, many of whom had legitimacy. They didn't come home as collaborators. The collaborator stuff really takes time to unfold.
But the deal, like the deal with Egypt, it's not unlike the Camp David Accord in the sense that the main effect of the deal is to bring this gigantic problem for Israel, this leadership of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, into the Israeli camp. They're on Israel's side now. And the result of that is all of the other allies, everybody else in the world that might have thought we support Palestinian liberation, they can't, because that would make them more Palestinian than the Palestinians, right? So part of the reason, I was lamenting the fact that Russia and China aren't doing anything more than they're doing. They aren't doing very much, even on the humanitarian file. But how can they? Because their official dealings are with the Palestinian Authority, and the Palestinian Authority is the big slogan of the PLO, the big fight that they had, was the phrase, this is the big phrase, the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people.
Yeah.
And they kept using that phrase.
That's the phrase.
And the United States throughout the 70s and 80s said, we will not recognize the Palestinian Liberation Organization. We will not talk to the Palestinian Liberation Organization unless they renounce violence and recognize the state of Israel, recognize Israel's right to exist. These were the conditions. So, I always make this analogy to Hamas, where they just made impossible conditions that to continue rejecting any kind of deal, any kind of peace, any kind of agreement, and to deny the Palestinian leadership legitimacy, whoever they are. So now it's Hamas, and Hamas can't do anything. Hamas has to just cease to exist. They want to go. They're open about we're going to go and kill all of Hamas. That's not even, there are no longer any conditions on Hamas that Hamas could fulfill to make a deal, even as they're dealing with them. But the PLO signed this deal, which means all of Palestine's allies have to go along with this. Everybody should go along with this. And then the leader of the PLO, the leader of the Fatah faction, Arafat, he sets up in Ramallah. He has the equivalent of a presidential compound in Ramallah, and
in Gaza first.
In Gaza first, yeah. And there's an airport, and then over the next 7 years, the Israelis continue to build and expand settlements in the areas that are supposed to be the Palestinian state. They have settlements in Gaza, they have settlements in the West Bank, and they have settlements in Jerusalem. And they're demolishing. These were the big issues. I mean, it's strange to talk about in this context that we're living in now, where they're starving hundreds of thousands of people, murdering tens of thousands of children, and destroying every single building. But they used to demolish people's homes in Jerusalem. I mean, they still do, but like home demolitions, where they would demolish Palestinians' homes on various pretexts and then give that land to settlers. That was like the modality during the Oslo years of gradually encroaching. And so throughout the 90s, it was Arafat having less and less to show for the Oslo Accords, and the gradual building of rage among Palestinians who were wondering what this deal really had accomplished for them.
Because Oslo wasn't a signed final product. So the way that they laid out Oslo was that there was all of these stages, and each of these stages had to be signed and agreed to. So each time a new stage would come up, Israel would say, we're not signing that. We're not signing this stage. And they would just drag their feet on these. So the whole thing was just written as a scam, basically. And one of the things that the PA has done to try to address that, like this sort of Edward Said sort of said, like, you know, that the Palestinians didn't even have, they were from exile, right? They're negotiating Oslo from exile. They never been to the West Bank. They didn't even have a map of the West Bank, infamously, at these negotiations. So Israel basically just had their way. And so one of the things that the PA tried to address in the sort of second generation of the PA is to have these lawyers that act as part of the negotiations unit now. And that's where people like Diana Butu and some people in the legal profession were part of this negotiating unit that was made up of lawyers. And that's what the PA brags about now, saying, you know, that the negotiating team is now full of map makers and lawyers. But at the time when they signed away Palestinian rights, they didn't have any of that. So Israel entrenches their occupation in the West Bank and asks the PA to effectively police their territories, which in the 90s means attack Hamas.
The other notorious thing is about Oslo is these areas A, B, and C. So area A is where Palestinians are sort of free, would you say, under self-government? So you can see the black territories in this map.
I don't know about free, because like Hebron is a divided place, you know, like these, and Gaza has settlements at this time in it, so they're deadly places. But effectively municipal control over that black territory, like those little tiny splotches. And that's the thing that the negotiating team, that Abbas in negotiating Oslo, they didn't know these kind of nuances that Israel had been building for 50 years, all into maps, because to create their state, Israel relied on maps, because they went around, as soon as they took over, they went around and changed the names on everything. All the street names, all the mountain names, all the village names, all got renamed. And Israel understood right from the beginning that these maps and the way that you parcel off the territory will actually be more important than in any negotiation that goes on. And so when Oslo starts, Sharon and Netanyahu, the right wing, Netanyahu goes and Sharon goes and speaks to settlers, and he says, "Go run, take all the hilltops." That's why they're called the hilltop youth. The settlers run, and he says, "Go grab whatever land you can, because anything you don't grab now is going to become part of a Palestinian state." So it was that conscious of literally telling people to go out and take hilltops, to make de facto, like to make what they call facts on the ground, to make the lived reality completely irrelevant, to make the negotiated deals completely irrelevant to the lived reality that you create as physical structures.
Area B is these villages, and then Area C is the Israeli-controlled.
So Sharon said, "Go take all that striped land." That's the land that he says to take. And you can see in the blue, with the blue triangles there, you can see the way the settlements, that's the same, they function the same way as the Gaza envelope. the settlements cut the West Bank in half. You can see to cut Nablus from Ramallah, to cut all the major, they just create little islands.
Islands, exactly. This is a very well made map in that sense, because it shows blue. It's like you see Israel. Israel is the sea, and Palestinians live on small islands, and they are not allowed to travel to one another. So,
and if you showed anyone that map in the New York Times, right, the whole debate would completely change. If you just simply showed that map to people, but they never do. They just show a map that shows Nablus and Hebron and Ramallah and Jerusalem. They don't show the map with the actual physical realities. They do now. It's been more something that has come out in after the Second Intifada with groups like the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OVXR. They put out like really detailed maps, because by the 2000s, the understanding that these maps are actually far more important than any discussion, any of these peace. You know, they have these ritualistic peace events where people go to some resort town and talk about how there's going to be a slightly different look to the map. But none of those things matter compared to the
resort in Egypt you're talking about.
Yeah, well, they did
Taba,
them in
Accords.
Taba, they did them in Sharm el-Sheikh, they do them at Camp David.
We should do that. We should go to the resort. Okay, so is there anything we need to do before we get to 2000 and the second?
Well, they don't start as collaborators, and that's an important part to say, is that Arafat plays all sides against each other, right? And so the Israelis are coming to Arafat right away and saying, essentially, arrest Mohammed Deif, the leader of the Qassam brigades, arrest Yahya Ayash, the principal bomb maker and leader of the Qassam brigades, and Arafat and Dahlan say no, and they pretend. They say the famous one about Deif is that Dahlan and him are neighbors in Khan Yunis, and so they go to this meeting, and the Israelis are telling Dahlan to arrest Deif, and Dahlan says, "Who?" Pretends he doesn't know who he's talking about. And so they kind of play both sides. Israel tells them to arrest Hamas people, and sometimes Arafat says that he arrested Hamas people to actually protect them from the Israelis who are going to kill them. So and then at the time, the PA security forces are the fighters from abroad. So they believe that they have a legitimacy in the public that isn't as collaborators. And so to set the tone for the Second Intifada begins with when Sharon marches on Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Palestinian population starts demonstrating and Israel starts massacring the demonstrators. It's the PA security forces who shoot back at Israel. And then at the beginning of the Intifada, basically the first day that it breaks out, Marwan Barghouti, who's a Fatah leader, he tells the PA security forces, give us your guns, like either use your guns to fight or give us your guns so that we can redistribute them. So the Second Intifada's weaponry begins by Barghouti redistributing.
All right. I'm going to, this is really interesting stuff, right? And you don't get exposed to this in the non-mainstream kind of information, the inside baseball, if you will, what's going on here in terms of organizations across the world. But I got a situation here I got to take care of. So I'm gonna wind it down right now. I'll be back mañana, tomorrow, same bat place, same bat channel, and all the rest. I appreciate you all, my brothers and sisters. We've already won. Okay, the victory is inevitable as long as we don't stop, and we're not going to stop. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Truthers United will never be defeated or divided. Have a good day, everybody.
Hey! Hey, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there for more AM Joy and the rest of MSNBC. And click on any of the videos right here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. And you can get more videos from MSNBC for free every day with our newsletter. Just visit